started.
I saw that.
Me neither.
Combination routes going to the corner.
Yeah.
My kids, yeah, my kids are so
You want to call it just a second amendment?
Huh?
We chose a formal league
Mayor,
next year.
probably in the packet, and I probably didn't.
Okay, so I think it's time we get started. And I'll just remind, if anybody new comes in at the back, you guys may need to help us make sure they don't stand in front of the camera. You've got it. Yeah. Thank you so much. So as we get started this evening, we usually begin with an invocation, and I've asked Darrell Bruner if he would provide that this evening. And the pledge.
Thank you, it's my honor. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this evening. And what a group of citizens, first responders, the Fleshman family. We have brave hearts all through this place. And our citizens of Nampa, Lord, that care about each other during this trying time. Just thank you for all our citizens. Thank you for the leadership we have, and Mayor Kling and the fellow council members here, and Lord, our directors that day in and day out carry out the business of Nampa. Anyway, we just most of all want to turn everything to you, because you know what's happening. You know the future. And Lord, help us to have respect for each other and put it in your hands. In thy precious name, amen. Now we get to say the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Bruner. So we'll begin our meeting with roll call.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Bruner,
Here.
Mucci,
Here.
Levi,
Present.
Haverfield,
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Thank you. So the first order on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, and we do have an amendment to the agenda as a whole, and we're going to be removing item 5.7, and this is authorizing the mayor to sign the resolution approving the updates to the City of Nampa employee handbook. So that particular, the handbook is still needing a little bit further review, and we will bring that back. I'm not sure if it'll be in 2 weeks or if it'll be a full month before that comes back, but we're asking that that be removed. Other than that, I'm not aware of any other changes. Council, do you have any changes to the agenda?
No.
Proposed? Okay, I would stand for a motion to approve the consent agenda and the amendment as stated.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Bruner,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
We have one proclamation this evening, and this is a proclamation regarding Safe Infant Sleep Awareness Month. And I believe we have someone from Canyon County Paramedics, Steve Blados, and then Lori LaRoche, I may be saying your names wrong, with the Canyon County Coroners that are here tonight. I'll go ahead and read this, and then I'll hand it to you and allow you guys to come forward if you'd like to. So, whereas sudden unexpected infant deaths, referred to as SID, is suddenly an unexpected death of an infant, birth to age 1 year, in which the manner and cause of death are not immediately obvious prior to investigation. And whereas sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, is a subset of the SUID and remains the #1 cause of infant death between the age of 28 days of life to 1 year. And whereas the tragedy of the sudden unexpected infant deaths can happen to any family, regardless of race, ethnicity, or economic group, and whereas evidence-based research has proven that when babies are placed in a crib alone, in the parent's room, on their backs, on a firm crib mattress with a fitted crib sheet, using no bumper pads, pillows, blankets, quilts, or stuffed animals and toys in a smoke-free environment, they will sleep the safest and reduce the risk of SIDS and prevent many other infant sleep-related deaths. And whereas the Northwest Infant Survival and SIDS Alliance is a statewide not-for-profit organization dedicated to providing infant-safe sleep education, bereavement support services, and creating community awareness around preventing sleep-related infant deaths. And whereas during the month of October, Northwest Infant Survival and SIDS Alliance will hold special events, including Run for the Angels on Sunday, October 11th, and a distribution of safe infant sleep educational pamphlets, cribs, and wearable blankets to families in need, therefore providing the best opportunity for babies in Nampa to survive and thrive. And now, therefore, I, Debbie Kling, the mayor of the city of Nampa, Idaho, do proclaim October 2020 as Safe Infant Sleep Awareness Month in order to raise awareness about preventing sleep-related infant deaths and to encourage infant-safe sleep practices so that no parent will have to endure the tragedy of the death of a baby. Thank you guys for coming. So it's Lori and Stephen. And Lori, you're with our Canyon County Coroner's Office, and Stephen, you're with Canyon County Paramedics. Thank you. Would you like to share with us just for just a moment?
Sure, no
Thank you.
problem. Do you mind if I remove this while I
Yes,
speak?
please do.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor and members of the City Council. October is Safe Sleep Awareness Month, so we really appreciate you taking the step to get the publicity out there about this. I look around this room and I see all the first responders here and some of them that I've been on calls with on calls like this, and I can tell you that for us and for the families involved, it's probably one of the worst things in the world. So that's why we want to put so much emphasis into teaching people about the way to have their children sleep safely. And so the only thing I would say is know the ABCs of safe sleep. Babies should be alone, on their back, and in a crib. Thank you.
Thank you for this validation.
Thank you, and I'd like to give this to you. And I'd like to thank you both. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for serving our community, and thank you for raising the awareness of this. It's so important. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on a given item. And tonight, as we get started, we have two different opportunities before us. And the first is a recognition of Brody Fleshman. And so who from the fire department? Chris King. Looks like you're headed over. And as Chris comes forward, I just want to tell you all, I see Sheriff Donahue here and so many of our firefighters and a policeman over there. Hi, Brad. So many firefighters here tonight and first responders. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for serving our community, for being amazing. I am so proud of our community. And so thank you is not enough. Thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward.
Well, we're here again, so thank you, Mayor and Council. A lot of great things happen in not just our organization, but around, and not just our employees, but in the community. So when we hear stories like this, it's very important to bring them forward and show the light for everybody, that the example that even a young member like Brody set for us. So tonight, I'm actually going to turn the table over a little bit to Steve. Steve's going to come back up, and we're here to hand off an amazing accomplishment and recognition to Brody and his family. And so Chief Terry was on duty that day, so we're going to go ahead and let him and Steve come up and to give you the dissertation on the incident and what kind of happened, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. Oh, good. I was going to make sure that we had Dar Anderson, Deputy Dar Anderson was also at the accident that day and helped. He's the one who actually made all this happen because he knew the story. We didn't all know the story when things happened, and he's the one who put Brody up for recognition. So I'll give a brief overview of what happened that day. There was a really bad accident on Lakeshore Drive. So if anybody's been on Lakeshore Drive, it's a pretty good 45 miles an hour, I think, road there. So a car, their vision was blocked, so they ended up pulling out onto Lakeshore Drive while Steve Hoshaw was driving a pickup that Brody and his sister Autumn were in. And so the car pulled out right in front of them. They didn't have time to react. He ended up hitting the vehicle, and then the truck that they were riding in, the Fleshmans and Hoshaws, ended up rolling. Brody, the 13-year-old Brody, was riding in the front seat and got, I'm not sure, he had 4 teeth damaged, at least one of them knocked out during the accident from the airbag deploying. When the vehicle came to rest, he realized Autumn was not out of the vehicle yet. So he crawled back into the vehicle and helped her get out. And then Brody and Randy, the driver of the vehicle, recognized that she had a severe leg injury with some severe bleeding going on. So between the two of them, I don't know the story exactly, between the two of them, they recognized that they needed a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. So from what I understand, Brody went back in, he knew there was a knife in there, got a knife, cut a strap from something, and applied a tourniquet to Autumn's leg, potentially saving her life. Autumn's had several surgeries since to repair her leg, and the awesome thing is she's walking with a walker right now. They weren't sure that was even going to happen. So she's on the road to recovery, and that's a big deal. So we want to recognize Brody for what he did. So I'll just read our letter for Brody first, and then we can just go in line after that. Brody Fleshman distinguished himself in a serious vehicle accident on August 22nd, 2020. During the accident, the airbag deployment damaged or knocked out 4 of Brody's teeth. After the vehicle came to rest, Brody realized his sister Autumn was not out of the vehicle. Without thinking of his own injuries, he selflessly re-entered the vehicle and assisted his sister out. Brody and the driver, Randy Hoshaw, recognized Autumn's severe bleeding and leg injury. Brody retrieved a knife and a strap to make a tourniquet for Autumn's leg. But Randy and Brody then placed the tourniquet and stopped the bleeding, potentially saving his sister Autumn. For his actions, the Nampa Fire Department recognizes Brody Fleshman for his courage, thoughtfulness, and selfless actions that day. Might as well just stand out up here, Brody.
I promise this is the last time I'll come up here and speak tonight, so.
It's good to have you.
Thank you again. Thank you to Brody, Chief Terry, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. I won't add anything else to it except that we can't do this by ourselves. So you see everybody that's in this room here, from the law enforcement agencies, the Nampa Fire Department, and the Canyon County Paramedics, we have to work together as a team in order to save people's lives. And the cool thing about it is, as bad as that day was, that day you were part of that team. And so before we let the sheriff present this plaque to you, I just wanted to read you, I'm going to give you one of our challenge coins. If you're not familiar with a challenge coin, it's something that's used in military circles, law enforcement, fire, and EMS to show when someone's gone above and beyond what their call of duty typically is. On the back of our challenge coin, I'm just going to read you what this says. It says teamwork. And it says a cooperative or coordinated effort on the part of a group of persons acting together as a team, each doing a clearly defined portion to achieve a common goal. That day, Saturday, August 22nd of this year, you were a big part of that team and did a great job helping your sister. So thank you very much, and we'll let the sheriff and deputy say a few words to you.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for letting us have this opportunity. Truly remarkable young man, remarkable family all the way around. And also tonight here is Officer Deputy Dar Anderson, who arrived onto the scene and took part in getting the scene safe as well. So I want to make sure we have special recognition for him. He's actually at the Police Academy right now, so he left his duties at the Police Academy to join us here tonight. So thank you, Dar. I appreciate you being here. Brody, I have a couple of things for you and your sister, but I'll read you a letter. This is from me, the Sheriff of Canyon County. It says, Dear Brody Fleshman, for selfless life-saving actions, on behalf of the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, I would like to commend you for your noble and courageous acts on August 22nd, 2020. The fact that you were able to evaluate a traumatic situation and still have the presence of mind to create a makeshift tournament with only the materials you had available, and then to apply that tourniquet to your younger sister was an extraordinary accomplishment. You are to be commended for reacting with such selfless heroism in a very stressful situation in which you helped save the life of a family member. As a token of our appreciation and respect, I'd like to present you today with our Canyon County Sheriff's Office shoulder patch, challenge coin, and list letter for your exceptional conduct. Thank you again for your outstanding effort, Sheriff Kieran Donahue. So I will present that to you. My congratulations and appreciation for what you did. Dar and you gentlemen should present the plaque. I was not there, but I know your teams were, so please present this to Brody with our appreciation. No, please.
So this says on behalf of the Nampa Fire Department, Canyon County paramedics, and the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, this is the Lifesaving Award presented for Brody Fleshman for your selfless and life-saving actions taken on Saturday, August 22nd, 2020.
Brody, I'm going to present this to your sister. I'm going to give you the two. And she also let me know about that day. So can you stand up to walk the young lady? Mayor, we'd like to present this to the young lady and with our appreciation for having such a wonderful family and having the courage to get through all these surgeries. You will be fine. We know that because you're very strong. So congratulations. Thank you.
So before you're seated, let's get a photo. And so if you guys can kind of circle around there, maybe behind and beside, right behind, there's some room. And let's do a family picture, a picture of the whole family and you guys. Yeah, somebody can just stand right behind the family. So
Mayor, some of the first responders that were on the call are here. I just invited them up. if
please
that's okay.
do. Everybody come forward that was on that call and we'll just get a photo right there. You guys can stand right behind them and Mom and Dad, I bet you have a lot to be thankful for. And I'd like to ask the parents, would you like to say anything?
On our part, you know,
Go ahead and
everybody
come,
there-
go ahead and come forward, that way we can hear, the people that are watching online can hear you.
I think on our part, the biggest thing was just, you know, the Hoshaw family, you know, they jumped right in, took care of our kids and called us and we got there, and to see just the community people, there were random people off taking care of kids that they didn't know, firefighters and paramedics taking care of, you know, our kids, the Hoshaw's kids, you know, just to see our community stuff going to work. And it was, you know, a lot of chaos going on, but definitely a blessing to see everything. So, but we appreciate everything that they did for us.
Well, we are very thankful for you guys and the work that was done here and lives that are still here for you to enjoy. So,
Can we ask Brody a few questions, Mayor?
yes?
Brody,
He
would you
doesn't
come forward?
It's not a pass-fail.
So how did you know what to do, Brody?
I had Boy Scout training a few years ago, and I just kind of remembered it
Were you nervous at all during all that?
a little bit. Just saw the blood, and I saw it looked like fat, but like it's just a bunch of blood mixed with white.
Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. We're proud of you.
Mayor? Yes.
Brody, do you mind if I send a picture to Mr. Vickers? I think he'd want to see all the South kids sharing this award with you. And Autumn, how are you? Are you doing okay? This is all kind of about you too, huh? Pretty cool to have your brother save your life, huh? Yeah.
Autumn, what year in school are you?
I don't.
Third grade.
Third grade.
Where do you go to school at? Oh, nice.
Are you a dancer?
So Brody, you know you're going to be a police officer for Napa City, right?
You're in trouble now.
Firefighter, right, first responder, yes.
Firefighter, paramedic.
Good job.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you to you guys. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is another recognition with the Nampa Fire Department, and who's doing? Chris King, I'll let you come up and
Back at it.
Yes.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So it's not uncommon that we get, a chance to support our members, but we had a specific request from one of the company officers of the crew that's standing back there today, Captain Limpesis. She sent in a letter of commendation request for Mr. Tony Chaluk and his wife, Chris. Back on August 3rd, while not at work, they were down camping, if anybody's familiar, down at Oxbow Reservoir at McCormick Campground. Came in contact with an elderly couple whose husband was actually having some medical issues there in the campground. The collaboration of the fire guys that are down there got them to go to the hospital in Weiser, where that husband was subsequently transported to St. Luke's downtown because of the seriousness of his condition. A day or so goes by, and they see the elderly woman in the campground still, do a little checkup on her, and find out that she has no means of hooking up their camper or trailer or getting to her husband in Boise. And so the Chalukas took it upon themselves to hook up the trailer, dump it, drive the 3.5 hours to Boise, get her reconnected with her husband, who she had not had contact with, and then again send up her trailer, fill it with fluids, everything, so she could stay in the camp or in the parking lot there to be with her husband while he was getting treatment throughout that time. So again, taking all that time out of their vacation to serve a citizen, a stranger, part of our community. Again, living by our core values of compassion for others and et cetera. So we just want to have them come up. Got a couple of letters of commendation for both Chris and Tony, and thank them for their selfless service to our community in and outside the city limits. So come on up.
This is a very tough act to follow. There's a true hero sitting there.
Thank you, guys. I've known Tony for a long time, and this is no surprise to me that this type of effort would show, but outstanding work. Thank you guys for passing on and making everybody out there part of your family.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know what I like to say about Nampa is that we are a community where neighbor helps neighbor. And even though you weren't in Nampa at that time, and not an official neighbor, you did exactly that. And that's what makes this place special. It's you. And the fact that you would go out of your way. And thank you so much. Thank you for being a reflection of who we want to be. You had an opportunity and you did it. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mayor, quick question. How's the gentleman doing?
I honestly, I don't know.
We don't know.
No.
Okay.
The exchange, actually, I found out through the campground. Anyway, she sent me a thank you, and then I didn't hear, she didn't give me an update. He's out of the hospital, he's back home.
Oh, good. Well, that's good
In
news.
Eastern Idaho, so that's good.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that we have one person signed up to speak for 3 minutes. And if you guys are wanting to go ahead and step out, you're welcome to. We'll pause for just a minute to give you just a second to get out. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
So what happened?
Thank you. Thank you to our paramedics. We appreciate you guys too. I didn't do a specific call out, so thank you. Okay, so we do have the, Bob Gaddis actually signed up to speak during our 3-minute time. So Bob, go ahead, and I think you can share your address, and we've got your name.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bob Gaddis. I live at 503 19th Avenue South here in Nampa. You should all have a copy of the handout that I provided. I'm here to ask you to consider declaring Nampa a Second Amendment sanctuary city. I know this is largely a symbolic gesture, but I think it's very important to affirm a constitutional right that is definitely under attack. At least 2 cities in Idaho have recently done so. I believe Eagle and St. Mary's, and there may be others. I think it would be a good idea for us to do so. I'd be interested in hearing if there's any opposition to that. If not, I would ask you to consider that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts.
The only other person, I think he's on a.
Yes. Is there anyone else that had intended to sign up to speak for the 3 minutes that did not have the opportunity to do so? Amy, hi.
You're either going to love this or hate it, so we'll do it like a Band-Aid really quick. Mayor, happy birthday on Sunday from the city of Tampa, from council. So we just want to do something very quick to honor you.
Thank you.
For your
Well, that
birthday.
is so, yes, we can.
Are we allowed to sing to you?
Yeah.
Amy?
Amy, are you gonna lead the song?
Happy birthday.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mayor Debbie. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Well, that was a surprise. Totally.
Sorry, no
Now-
one else online anymore. But
Thank you for the thoughtfulness. That was so gracious and thoughtful. Thank you. It's another year. You know what I like to say is I don't like getting older on the outside, but I like it on the inside. I wouldn't go back. I love it on the inside. So thank you so much. Okay, so now is the opportunity for mayor and council comments. And I think we're going to start with Beth Einig. Is Beth here?
She's online.
Oh, hi, Beth. I think, we can't hear you. No. Let's try that again. Can't hear. Nope.
I can't read lips.
Are you going to show, yeah, you could write something in the text box if you want to in the chat, and she's going to show a video. If the
They
sound.
can hear her on Teams.
It's not coming through our system here.
Yeah.
So we're not tied in, and we're not going to hear the video either.
Says Rodney, change your Teams to speaker.
Change Teams to speaker.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Yes.
did we already pass over mayor and council comments?
That's this.
Go to device settings.
Okay.
Sorry. 3 dots.
So those, are you talking in Teams? Go to the 3 dots in Teams. So go down to where, well, maybe that's it right there. See it right there?
On the bottom bar.
No, up, go up, right there. So do you see it in request control, right above that? Right there, those.
Okay.
And then,
Go device settings. And speaker. Maybe this one?
I don't know.
Okay, Beth, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
We can hear you
Okay.
now. Good.
Mayor and Council, we wanted to share with you an award that was received by the City of Nampa and the Conservation Commission. They received the GEM Award for from the Idaho chapter of the American Planning Association in honor of our historic preservation plan that was recently adopted. So they put together a video for us on it, and I just thought I would share that really quickly. So I will start this at the beginning.
We're not hearing any volume.
Hearing it?
No.
So much for technology. Let's see. Let me see if this works.
Understand the idea of history and recognize we have a lot more historic periods and assets in our community beyond just our kind of early 20th century railroad boom. Like, we have our historic downtown, and ours is actually very well preserved, but there was this desire out of the commission to acknowledge the fact we also have school buildings that are also historic that don't necessarily fit into that little narrow railroad boom timeframe.
When I was hired, I met with the staff and I also met with the Arts and Historic Preservation Commission, and we developed a work plan so that we were all on the same page about what it was that they wanted, when we could get things accomplished, when we would interact with the public. We had iterations of meetings with the AHPC and with the public, collecting information on what they were concerned about regarding historic resources. The Historic Preservation Commission also was very concerned about elements related to how they operate, how they integrated in the development process. So we had that second phase had a heavy emphasis on evaluating the preservation program itself.
We also did some really cool work, something I've never seen before with utilizing GIS. We were able to take the building permit data from the county and put it into GIS, and it shows the state of the structures. So you get this real-time look at how the community grew. After we did that GIS map and we got a sense of the age of some structures, we identified a few neighborhoods outside of the downtown core and a couple of buildings that aren't right in the downtown core that are definitely things we want to look at preserving.
I'd just like to emphasize that historic preservation is so important to communities and their quality of life. I hope that planners across the state will see this as an opportunity to reach out to their state historic preservation office. And I think this is an example of where the two interests really do come together and have the potential to do a lot more when they're joined up.
So that was the video clip that they put together for us to share our plan and the information with the rest of the state. So I just wanted to share that with City Council.
And Beth, thank you. So the award is sitting here. And so it's the 2020, set up there, there we go. Beth, I just want to thank you and your team and our Historic Preservation Commission, the work that's done. Jordan Yankovic, I believe, is unable to be here tonight, chairs that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so you know what? It takes everybody working together to make a great community. And so I just so appreciate the efforts of our community to maintain our amazing city and the historic footprint that is so special. So Beth, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one other thing under Mayor and Council comments, then I'm going to defer to Council. Tonight is the last evening for the Hilty organization and Doug Waterman to be here serving us. And I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge our appreciation for the Hilty firm, Mark Hilty, Doug Waterman, for your work. You've been a delight to work with, And just want to say thank you. And I didn't want the evening to go by without expressing our appreciation to you and to the entire firm for the work that they've done on behalf of our city. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hopefully the future has us back at this table at some point. So anyway, we've appreciated the time and appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments during the mayor and council comment period from the council?
Mayor, do you have something?
Yeah, I'll let you go, Victor.
And I think Victor does.
So my first or last?
I think actually Victor was first, because he actually, and then Randy, then, okay, there we go.
Yeah, go by age. I got you there. I got you there for sure.
Randy would gladly do that, right?
Yeah, that's for
Let me do
sure.
that first.
Go for it.
Mayor and council and the community of Nampa, this council and mayor has been really receptive toward trying to figure out how we can help the community with their taxes and the burdens that we're having to deal with day by day and day in and day out. And so we've gone through a lot of situations to where we've done as best we can. So in light of that, I'm going to ask and going to propose a couple of different things here that I think may help our community out a little bit better. And one would be, is in looking at the Wells Fargo Bank, we've been dealing with the bank, Wells Fargo, for over, 20 years maybe, if not more. I don't know how much we pay them in fees. I don't know how much that they are doing for us in terms of availability and accountability. So our council and our mayor has always said that we want to bring our business to Nampa and to bring it to a hometown city. That's what we are here now. And so I would like to ask and maybe figure out a way that we can begin to look into the costs and the price and what we have with Wells Fargo. If there's a bank it's a hometown that wants to be involved with the city of Nampa, it's my feeling that we should get them involved and spread some of the work that we do for our city. And Wells Fargo is a major corporation, and I just think that bringing back home here, helping each other out, is by far the best for us and best for our community. So that's what I would ask us as to begin maybe a view of the records of the fees and the costs, and if we can go ultimately get an RFP for a local bank, I would appreciate that very much. The second thing is community involvement is important to us being the council and the mayor and the community. And one of the things that I think we may have lost a little bit of that would be in line of the Idaho Hispanic Culture Center. I see that building is vacant quite a bit. We own the building, we own the property, and it's not much community involvement with that, and that defeats the purpose that we've always have had that here. And so I am asking that we consider looking into this and see whether we can't make it more available to our community, more available to students, to Boys and Girls Club, to community-involved 501c3s that could really use that space that don't have one now, or the kids that really should be at helping, which it hasn't because it's been vacant quite some time now. So, Mayor, I am looking into this. I don't know how the other council members feel or what the community says, but I'm always open to hear what your comments are. And therefore, I have written a letter to our attorney, Mark Hildy, to figure out what the lease agreement is, and we need to make that viable to us, and we need to make that Idaho Hispanic culture what it used to be 20 years from now, or 20 years ago, which was very involved in every community event that I could remember. It hasn't been, and I don't know how they're staying afloat. But I think it's time. I think it's time we step in and do what's right. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Victor, thank you for sharing your comments this evening, and duly noted, and then we will follow up.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Randy, Councilman Haverfield.
Yes, Council Mayor, I just wanted to remind everyone, I think a few of you received an invite from the Care House Partnerships on their grand opening. This has been a couple of years in the making. I had a small part in it, but basically it's a clinic that will be providing faith-based free medical and counseling for those that in our community that don't have health insurance and live at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. So there's they've indicated that there's approximately 10,000 people in the Nampa vicinity that can utilize their services, and so it's next Wednesday, October the 28th at noon. It's across the street to the north from First Church of the Nazarene. It's Care House Partnerships, Care House Clinic.
Thank you for sharing that. I tell you what, it has been a tremendous blessing to our community. So thank you. Councilman Bauer.
Yeah, when the gentleman came and spoke to us about being a sanctuary city, it made me think, and I'll try to get the source. I'm not sure if it's Field or Stream, or maybe it was a magazine I read recently. Canyon County does have, I think, the highest firearms per capita in the United States. And so I think that's something that would sit well with the citizens here. They would love for our city to be a pro-Second Amendment city, and to make that official. The citizens already have proven that by the amount of firearms we have here to protect our families and to protect our properties and things like that. Me, myself, I've been in multiple situations where a firearm has saved my life. One was in San Jose when I had someone try to break into my house in the middle of the night when my two babies were 1 and 3. That was back when there was only one room and I was in the back and the babies were sleeping in the front. So I can appreciate that, you know, there's a time and a purpose for it, and it can save lives. And I think it's something we should consider as a council to make it official and make our city a pro-Second Amendment sanctuary city.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the council this evening? Okay. Seeing none, it's about 17 minutes till 7, and actually, I have a quick question. Tom, do you have anyone waiting? You don't? Okay. If it would not be a problem with legal, could we switch to finished business so Bruce Skog doesn't have to sit here until 8:30 tonight? Would you like to wait then?
Mayor, you're being way too nice to a past council.
Well, I just got to thinking, I don't see anyone else that would be waiting this long. And since it is getting to that time, let's go ahead and move to unfinished business. And would like to skip over to, I believe it is 7.1 on the agenda. Let's see. Yes, it's item 7.1 on the agenda. This is an action item, and this is to request the Nampa City Council take direction and uphold or overturn the Forestry Division's decision to deny Canyon Outdoor Media's request to remove right-of-way trees on the Carter overpass. And so this is continued discussion from this the last council meeting. And we're going to start with Darren, excuse me, I think you're appealing. So do we want to start with you? Yes, you may then. I'm sorry, I about got that wrong, so thank you. I think we all know Bruce Skog.
Okay.
Yeah. But does he need to do his address?
Please.
Oh, she's got it. I just don't want to mess it up anymore.
Social Security number, we want it.
My birthday's next month.
You want to sing happy birthday to you now?
You can have a song.
Happy birthday. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I wanted to hear the rest of his story, but I'll have to call Jacob Bauer on the. With Jacob Bauer coming out with a gun would be pretty scary. We are, Madam Mayor, appealing this decision. I won't repeat what I did last time too much. I'll be brief. Mr. Massoud couldn't be here. He's the owner. He wanted to be here. He owns several signs in our community and has been involved in the community for a long time as a taxpayer with these signs. A little bit of a difference is his sign is his business. It's a little different than if you have your store and your sign starting to be blocked, although they have valid claims to get trees cut back too. But that is his business, and it will be gone if you don't grant this appeal for him. He's losing about $4,000 to $5,000 a month. I reaffirmed with him today. And, oh, by the way, he wanted to be here, but because of COVID, he couldn't get here. He's grounded in Missouri. So his business will be gone, where another business may lose some of their business. He's about to lose all of his business. And he's having to do charity on his signs because it's going to go down. It would cost him about $80,000, rough estimate, to raise that sign, but it would only go up 4 feet without having to come get a variance, and that wouldn't do him any good with the trees. He did make, or rather his employee made an error. He thought the sign was there before the trees, and he apologizes for that error. The staff came up and said that the trees were there first a little bit, but really they're all going in about the same time with that new overpass. So he does apologize if that's the case. That was their memory, is that they were there first. But regardless, he's the taxpayer, he's the business, like all of our businesses, that supports our families. So he pleads with you as the elected officials to please merely take down the 4 trees, which Darren and his staff has said that would be a good option. They would like that. He's going to pay for costs. He's going to pay for replacement trees wherever you want them in the city, there or somewhere else. He'll work with you in any way. And so it's business versus our city trees, and the businesses pay for our trees in the beginning too. So I hope you'll grant the appeal.
Bruce, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I ask him a question?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Scott, a couple questions. You gave a figure of that this gentleman is losing each month. Like, how far is that generated back, and how is that figured?
It's an electronic sign on one side, and it's a static sign on the other side. So he has to keep reducing his prices to get people to go onto that board, or people will call and say, he's actually had many calls, when are those trees going to be out of the way? Or they try to sell it. Their salesman was here last time, and he says, well, we don't want that one. That one has the trees in the way. So he's seen his income go down on that sign as a result. He's fairly experienced.
Follow up, please. So I'm kind of curious as to how far back this goes, because the trees have been large for a while.
It goes back a couple of years where he's gradually losing income more and more.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Kling.
Yes.
Bruce, has there been any consideration, instead of chasing the sky with both the trees and the sign, to come down with the sign, knowing that you can always trim underneath the trees and have visibility, or is it important that there's visibility from the freeway?
Well, it's not the freeway so much, but it's coming over the overpass from the other direction. He has a sign on the other side also. So either way, we're putting expense on a businessman to change it, essentially change your whole store if you don't move the trees.
I was just wondering if there's any consideration to go to a ground mount as opposed to pedestal, or I mean pole mounted.
Yeah, I mean, John, I'm not him, but I don't see that working.
Okay. As long as it had been considered, is the only question. Thanks.
I have another question. So if the sign is two-sided, the trees, I think, are on one side. Which side is the side facing the trees?
It's both sides are blocked by trees. We're
sides.
proposing a removal of 2 of the main trees. There'll still be some blockage by the other trees, but this will allow him to be able to say to his customers, everybody will see my sign when they pass by at some point. Now they can't.
Okay. For some reason, I was misunderstanding. I was thinking the trees were on all along one row, but they must not.
They're in one row, but as the sign, this is the sign, here's the row of trees. As you approach this way, 2 trees block most of it, and the other direction, and depending on which lane you're in, it's completely blocked.
Okay.
So, Mayor, I think I understand. So clarification. So one side of the sign, he actually has a business there, correct?
No.
His whole business is selling advertising on the sign?
On signs.
On both sides of the sign?
Both sides of the sign.
And so both sides are electronic and change, or do not?
No, I get my directions correct. The south side is electronic, the other side is static.
Static, but he sells both sides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And
Councilman.
you say he has several other signs in the city that he does the same with?
Yes.
Okay.
Does he reside here in Nampa?
He does not. He's been involved with, I think, Chamber years ago and different involvement with other businesses.
Okay. Are there any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Darren?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just want to talk a little bit about the process of the city forester. And so through ordinance, the city forester, his job is to manage and protect the trees for the city of Nampa. And so what we try to do is kind of make our decisions in the direction that the city would like to go. So the process is anybody that wants to do work in the right-of-ways would fill out a permit, and that permit would go to the city forester, and that city forester would make a decision. Canyon Outdoor Media, they turned in 4 applications. We were able to accommodate 3 of them, but this one that is being appealed is one that we didn't feel comfortable approving. As you can see from maybe,
I don't know which one to pull up.
it's in the council packet. I'm sorry, I didn't know you didn't have the council packet up. But if you were able to get the council packet up and just go to the tree. Just want to talk a little bit about the timeline. I think the timeline is important to how the trees, everything came about. We will have an exhibit. It's probably, if you have it on your computer, it's this. This shows 2006 imagery of the Karcher overpass being constructed. As you can see, that there was a lot of pre-planning that went into this overpass. So the public with tax dollars spent millions of dollars developing this pathway or this overpass. And not only that, is they had in mind or the forethought to put in nice landscaping and trees so it would become a beautification corridor. And that part of it's really is really important because those that have been here a long time in Nampa, you'll remember 25 years ago, there were great efforts with our beautification corridors trying to take blighted areas and then trying to get them into nice areas. And we've been successful with Garrity and Franklin and some others. But the really cool part about the Karcher overpass is that the beautification project, it was already planned. As you can see the spacing, and maybe, yeah, that's a good one there. You can see the spacing of the trees. So these are sycamores or London plane trees. They get to be very big, and the reason that they picked big trees, you can see how wide this corridor is. The whole plan of this beautification project was that the trees aren't designed at full growth to have space in between them. The trees are selected to, they're the type that grow 50 feet wide, and so on both sides of this corridor at full growth, that these trees would grow together and provide a really great beautification corridor. These are long-lived trees. We understand that some of them have been damaged. We've had a few wrecks that have broke off the little ones, and then you got to start over. But over time, you won't see the difference. I think that these trees here, when I say long-lived, I'm talking 200, 300 years is what they'll live. So I think I would want to talk a little bit about, you know, when this came across my desk, why I said I don't think it's in the best interest of the city to remove these trees. I know that we put some options in. That was at the request of council. We still have those options. It's not our recommendation. Our recommendation is to leave these trees as they are right now and go with our plan. So I hope it's recognized that that a lot of public money went into this overpass. It benefits not one business, but it benefits many businesses in the city of Nampa. And you heard Beth talk last time about how important it is that we have nice business corridors in the city of Nampa. We're not having the public come to us complaining about these trees blocking the sign. We think the public likes the trees, and we think they like beautification in our city. Like I said, this was a planned beautification project. It came before the sign. It's not like we went and put these trees up in front of somebody's sign. Certainly they were small, but there's two organizations that know about trees. That's people that work in the tree industry and people that work in the sign industry. They know that these trees are going to grow when they put those they put that sign there. And so our department works with many businesses, over 150 businesses in the city of Nampa. We value business, and that's part of our concern here is a beautification corridor benefits all businesses. Perhaps this one could be looked at as only benefiting one business. I also want to talk a little bit about the billboard and the moratorium. Some of you may not know that billboards such as this in Nampa have a moratorium, which means that you can't have more billboards like this, but you can move a current billboard around to another spot. According to the city ordinance, its billboards are considered differently because they mention the aesthetics of what the billboard does to a community. And so the assumption is when the city council looked at this, they didn't want more billboards, probably because the public was complaining about them or they had great concern. And so as I looked at this, I'm weighing, okay, the city has a real interest in beautification corridors, and they want them to be nice and beautiful for our city. At the same time, they have billboard signs that they placed a moratorium on. And so it seemed a little, it didn't seem like the right move for me is to say, let's cut down trees so a sign can be seen that has a moratorium on it. It just didn't seem like that is the direction that the city was wanting to go. Let's see. I guess with that, I'd answer questions. We do have, our recommendation is to approve. You'll see the write-up. Our recommendation is to approve our recommendation. If that's not the choice, as council directed us to, we put a couple alternatives in. Again, it's not the alternatives that we want. We think that cutting the trees out will make the corridors worse. Putting smaller trees in will make the corridor not as good as it would be if we left it alone. And so I don't think I have anything else except to answer questions. And
Thank you, Darren. So in speaking, I think I'm just going to make comment, or would you like to make the comment, Doug, regarding our questions? If there are any questions for Darren, I'll let you go ahead and state it, Doug.
Well, at this point, I would certainly allow Mr. Skog the opportunity to come back up and respond. The scope of what Darren has talked about is sufficient to, there's been new information. So feel free to ask Darren whatever questions you would like. Preferably ask them now so that Mr. Skog can come up and respond to what Darren has said, not bring up new information, but respond to that, and then you can make your decision.
Thank you, Doug.
Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Darren, can you remind us what the current caliper of those trees are?
I think the last report, they were between 6 and 12 inches, the current trees that are planted right now.
That's a significant dollar amount at $225 per caliper inch. So it's just, have you done an assessment of what's there?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Darren. Sorry, Mayor and Council, can I interject? Is whatever you're holding there, is that in the packet already?
No, it's it looks like it's
Okay.
a count of trees and maybe the caliper. Or the width. Is this the?
Oh, okay. Okay, so Mayor and Council, if I may real quickly. Darren, if you want to pull information from that and you want to present that, that's fine, but Mr. Skog doesn't have that document, so I would
Okay.
advise you not showing the document itself to council.
Yeah, I think the calipers is that what you're, I can share that. Is that what you're saying, Adam? Is there between 6 and 12 or? Okay. Okay. So they're between that. We have the trees that have been, that are to be removed. There's a technique that's common in the tree industry, and it's to measure the trees at breast height, the diameter. We have not taken those of the exact trees that would be removed.
Okay.
Although we did put calculations in there if that is what the city wanted to do, and we'd have to calculate it and measure them.
So the option 2 as an example, you've got 4 2-inch caliper trees potentially, if that option's chosen. So that's 8-inch caliper total. Do you know the difference between the caliper of the 4 trees that would be coming out and the 4 that would be going in? Is there a number there?
We didn't do a number there.
Because that's considerable when you're looking at $225 per caliper inch. If it's equating to 3 12-inch trees, it's 36 times 225. That's a lot of money. I just don't know what that number would be.
Yeah, I think that our approach was, Councilman, that for us, this was, the importance to us is maintain the integrity of the landscaping. It wasn't necessarily for us a money issue. We recognize if you go and you approve something differently from our recommendation, I'm confident we could calculate that out and work it out with the Canyon Outdoor Media.
Mayor, if I can follow up. This recommendation, though, the additional cost is borne by the sign owner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's why it's important to know what we're saying that they might have to come up with dollar-wise to go with that option. So that's just missing information. The other thing is, at the last council meeting, I asked if you'd considered using a combination of vegetation, lower growth vegetation, shrubs, low growth shrubs that might get 4 to 6 feet tall, as opposed to just putting back in trees as a replacement. Had you considered that?
We talked about that. From our standpoint, we thought that more shrub beds would be more of a maintenance cost. They wouldn't look as good. And so that's why we thought we would just leave them out if there was a change. But our staff did talk about that.
And one last question, Mayor, is this the landscape strip just north of Stanton Optical on the Karcher Overpass?
Yes, it's the landscape strip is in your packet. I think you can see it.
Right.
It's a right-of-way strip. It's identified.
So there's 2 trees on either side of the sign that we're considering in that same landscape strip. Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Excuse me. So who is this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure which mayor. Thank you, Councilwoman Levi.
Oh,
And then Councilwoman Nucci next.
Okay. Thank you. Darren, when someone applies for a right-of-way tree permit, are they aware, or is there print somewhere that lets them know that there might be landscaping obstacles in the future so that they can be prepared or warned about these things?
Well, that would be they would apply for a sign permit to let them know that if there were trees. But so when they get a tree permit to plant in the right of way, the forester will do a visit with them. They'll look at the power lines ahead, they'll look at the space, and so they'll make a recommendation of the type of tree to plant that would be compatible with the area. Whether that, if it has poor soil, they'll recommend a variety of different things and give a recommendation for the best success and the right size of tree.
So to follow up, please. So this specific business owner, I was looking through the packet again, and there were mounds showing where the trees were going to be put. He was aware that the trees were going to be there?
The trees were already there.
Okay.
Before he put the sign there.
Okay.
The trees were already there before he put in a permit.
And so that is a possible consequence or hazard that they know of ahead of time.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Mucci?
Thank you, Darren. Could you please remind me, did you say last time that even if the caliper of tree was changed, it would still grow to be about the same size, full grown as what's there currently? So it might be a short-term fix for long-term?
Yeah, so if we put the same type of tree in there, so if we took out big London planes out and put smaller London planes in, yeah, they eventually, over the years, with a long-lived tree like this, over the years, they would catch up. And there wouldn't be too much of a difference. The more years that go by, it seems like the less noticeable that they would be. But certainly, it takes, there would be a noticeable difference for, many years for sure.
Follow up? As far as signs being able to be moved, is that in agreement with a private property owner to place the sign, or is that city property?
So the sign is not city property. It's my understanding that Canyon Outdoor Media probably has some kind of agreement with a private property owner. They have the agreement, and I don't know what that agreement is, which they don't need. They need to file for a sign permit to do that, but not a tree permit if they're putting a sign on private property.
But what you said is that with the moratorium, you're still amenable to that being placed on some other property where that sign would be visible.
Rodney could probably, this is getting into Rodney's expertise.
Okay.
Mayor and Councilwoman Mucci. Yeah, so we have a limit in our planning and zoning code. We have a limit of the number of billboard signs that are allowed in the city. So when that moratorium was put in place, the council was concerned about the number of billboards going up in the city. So then they limited that number. So if another one goes in place, like a new sign is to be placed, a billboard sign is to be placed on a property, a private property, like this is, in this situation, it's on a private property. So if that sign is to go into place, another sign, another billboard has to come down. So that number has to stay the same in the city.
But that particular sign could be moved, potentially?
It could be moved.
Because it would not be adding.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Rod.
Mayor Kling, a follow-up question.
Yes.
Are the
thank-
pictures in our packet, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, Councilman Bruner.
go ahead.
but
Yeah,
Go
follow up.
ahead, and then he'll be up.
I'm sorry, are the pictures in our packet after the trees were trimmed?
No.
This was before, because there's,
They're captured, the most recent ones, they were to capture mostly to show that the trees were planted prior to the sign was there. So they were captured, like, I think one's dated, there's a 2006, a 2007, and then like a 2012. There were, during the first new business item, Adam, and included in the packet, he put some pictures in the packet after they were trimmed, yeah, and pruned.
In this packet?
Yeah, they're at the very end, I believe. Yeah, they're at the very end, and those were the ones that our forester handed to you each. And so they put them at the very end, I believe.
Of the whole packet?
Yeah, right, yeah, the whole packet.
That was part of the consideration at the last council meeting, was that the attorney for the property owner and you guys were going to get together out there and look at how they look today being trimmed back. And so are these the pictures of it trimmed back or not yet? Okay, so it looks different than that.
Is that the ones? Okay. Mr. Skog also took some.
So are those before or after the trimming of the trees?
One with the, you had ones that identify with the red square around the so forth, or the ones that are getting after the tree trimming.
Okay.
Recent, the date, recent, they were pruned.
The October 2nd date, okay. And the ones without a date are prior to that? Okay, thank you.
Councilman Bruner.
Mayor, I'll have some questions for Mr. Skog too. And the first question though is the owner, and I'm sorry, I already forgot his name, but he's not a citizen of Nampa. So I'm just curious, maybe this is a Doug question. So what's the tax benefit for the city of Nampa on an advertising sign like this? Just a rough estimate?
I don't know the valuation. I'd have to look it up. I
Okay.
didn't even guess.
Because there again, it's probably my lack of study, but I was thinking that this was a business. My other thing is the future. Once we get by this, for the future, do we plan on putting further trees on these corridors? Do we have more trees planned for these corridors?
So this is, what you're seeing is the plan for this corridor. So we don't have any.
I'm talking about Garrity or Franklin or.
They're kind of, if the tree is there, that's the plan.
Okay.
So it's not, we don't plan on, putting new trees in the middle.
Yeah, I guess what I'm doing, I'm following up on Councilwoman Levi's question on that. I just want to make sure, and I'm mainly concerned, we have a moratorium, so I'm mainly concerned about a business going in and say there's no trees there. So they're going to put in their signage, whether it's high or low or whatever the case is. And if we have plans for more trees on that corridor, then somebody is communicating to that business owner that will take place before they place their signage. That's what I'm asking in the future.
I think that's a really good point. And so I think staff take note that what's important is if someone comes in for a sign permit, a different type of sign, right, where there isn't the moratorium like on these signs, that there's clear acknowledgement that there are trees, and so that we don't get into this situation. Yeah. I think, is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking. I want for future to not have this type of challenge. And maybe somebody else has some question. I do have a question for Mr. Skog, if he's allowed to come up by legal.
Okay. So are there any other questions at this time for Darren, for staff? Okay. So Doug, how are we doing?
Good. Real quickly, Mayor, Council, the residence of the applicant, his city of residence, shouldn't be considered in whether or not the application's approved or denied. Just a thought. Yeah.
I'm just commenting that he's not a taxpayer. And I'll just make one quick comment. The timing, I asked that specifically last time, so thank you for the clarification that the trees were up before the sign, because that was not stated before. Thanks.
Thank you.
He is a taxpayer, right?
Well, that's my understanding. We just don't know what the valuation is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Councilman Skog can come back up, correct? excuse me, former Councilman Scott.
Future state, what?
Yes.
Mayor, if I may, Mr. Scott, may I ask my question, and I'm sure you have follow-up too.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm actually kind of following him up on Councilman Haverfield's knowledge about calipers, which I have no knowledge whatsoever. But if his estimate is correct, 36 times 225, then that's about $8,100 is what I'm figuring. So my question to you is, I realize the owner is not here. Is that something that you, if it is that amount or even more, do you think the owner's willing to pay that amount to replace trees?
Because he's losing so much money, he's very willing to do that, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there's not a ceiling on what he's willing to pay.
Well, in that range, yeah, he didn't give me a ceiling number, but he understood the proposal and he was okay with that, and I spoke with him this afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
So, do you have further, would you like to follow up to any of the comments that were made?
Yes, Madam Mayor, council members, just a little bit of follow-up. I produced those 3 photos at the last meeting. Those were taken the day of the council meeting after the trees were trimmed, and it was to show clear blockage of the sign viewed from the majority of traffic from 2 different directions. And also, I didn't take new ones from the other direction, facing north or south. I suppose it simply comes down, and the taxes he pays, I asked him that question. He says about $12,000 to $13,000 a year, not for that sign, but for all of his signs together. And that's property taxes. And then I don't know where his employee lives, if it's here or elsewhere. But it comes down to the city philosophy in Nampa. Should trees serve man, or should man serve the trees? And it's different in different communities. And I think I know where most of your hearts lie. And thank you again for allowing us to appeal.
Mayor.
Yes. Okay, Councilwoman.
I know there are lots in there. Yes, question. Hi. So I drove by that, and I actually saw your campaign sign on it, but I
Yeah.
also saw yours over by Albertsons. And having purchased billboard advertisement before, I know that you kind of get the bundle. You get some really good locations that sometimes are not equally as good. And so I think from impressions and saturations, I saw yours on both, and I can recall both very well. And so these trees will be bare shortly. So I think the whole year that, he'd be losing the impressions of people driving by that when the leaves are going to come off shortly. I think the $5,000 to $6,000 a month probably is only accurate for part of the year, because it would be a very visible sign other times. And so I think that's a factor for me, is just knowing, purchasing billboard advertising, that some of the locations are better than others. And I think that's sort of a risk, I think, when what we've heard here tonight is the trees were there before. And so I wonder what your client is thinking about that, where just some of it is good location and others, based on what's happening in communities, may not be as prime.
He did not add up for the entire year, and I don't know the answer to that question. But I'll tell you, I got a heck of a discount because of that tree location. It's not seen very well, and people do pass by that I've mentioned this to and say, well, I don't even know where that sign is. I didn't see it because of the trees. It is an impediment for a lot of the year, if not all year. But I don't know what it looks like when the leaves are off. But we did this very solution on Garrity for this company just recently, where we replaced all the trees with actually better trees, so the signage would be visible for his business, but also other businesses on Garrity. It's a good solution.
Are there further questions
Yeah.
for Mr. Scott? Okay.
The 3 photos that have plaintiffs exhibits 1, 2, and 3, were they taken after the trees were trimmed or before?
Yes, on the day of council meeting, and it was after the trees had been trimmed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So at this time, I think I'd like to move to just discussion. Council, what would you like to do? We're running late on our public hearings, but that's okay, because this is an important topic. And at this time, I might suggest that hopefully we have all the answers to our questions. If there were a question, it should not be a new question, bringing something new into the equation. It should be something that we're familiar with. So council discussion.
Are we
Would you like-
closing? Is this a public hearing?
This is not.
Okay.
I'm just wanting to be clear that if for some, I'd like to move us along, is what I'm doing. It's not a public hearing. But we don't want to bring up new information at this time because it's,
Mayor Kling?
Mhm.
I'm in favor of alternate option number 2 as proposed by, in our packet. I think it meets the intent of maintaining the trees at a class 1 level, which is what I'm familiar with as far as in corridor beautification. As we've discussed, I think it's important when we go forward after this meeting that we have a time with staff to maybe go over an ordinance or an understanding of what the corridor beautification process should be. But I'll make a motion for alternate option number 2 as proposed.
I'm gonna second that. I'm not, that does still concern me that with the timing, so I was actually weighing that both sides. But there again, as my comment in the future, that we have better communication and so on, but I will second the second option.
one thing I am aware of in speaking with staff is that any decision that we make sets a precedence for every other sign company and tree in the city, which is challenging. That said, staff has said that they just need to know what the will of the council is as we plant trees and have a tree plan for the city. And so as you suggested, it's important. It takes a long time. How long? Well, I don't know, remember actually, if I go back, I think I do remember how long those trees have been there. And so it takes a long time to grow a tree. And so throughout the city, it's important that we have some consistency if we're going to be a city of trees, which we are, and recognized for that. So I think the key is, I think staff wants to know, right, what is our priority and how do we walk this out long-term? Because we shouldn't have to be here doing this. And knowing that we're going to set a precedence. So where do you say no?
Mayor.
How does that work?
Mayor, and I think as we get further into maybe talking about this further, there's different ways to layer trees, whether it's serpentine as far as the numbers, or height towards the back, away from the street frontages so that, you appreciate the bigger trees around the perimeter of properties instead of right there on the front road. So I think that whole conversation might even get into talking about the trees, ground mounted versus elevated pole mounted signs. So it's more of an open topic, but I think at this point, it's not setting any precedent. We're just addressing a request. But going forward, I think it's important that we do have a discussion with staff and with our forester as far as on preferred methods of vegetation planting and then layering. Each jurisdiction is different. Eagle is the worst that I've worked with as far as the density of vegetation. But then again, it's done such that, you have the tapering of height as it goes back away from your road frontages too. So anyway, I think for this, if he's willing to pay the additional cost, that means that there's several trees that can be planted elsewhere in the valley or in the city as well.
I would like some clarity real quickly. I think what I heard former Councilman Skog, it's hard, I never get the councilman when you're setting up here, and now I can't get rid of it, had mentioned 2 trees on each side. And I just want to make sure that follows what it's to remove 4 trees on the east side of Karcher Overpass. So is that motion a correct motion for that?
I asked if it was on both sides of the sign. So there's
Right.
two on either side of the sign on the east side in that landscape strip.
So Mayor, and I can bring it up, but since you have it, will you just read as far as the payment from the owner, what that actually says?
So this says that this would be denying Parks and Recreation's recommendation and remove 4 trees on the east side of the Karcher Overpass that will allow billboard visibility, replace the removed sycamore trees with Class 1 trees that are a minimum of 2-inch caliper, irrigation, landscaping repair, the planting of new trees, and the removal of the existing trees will be at the expense of Canyon Outdoor Media and performed by an approved contractor. Canyon Outdoor Media will compensate the city for the removed trees at the cost of $225 per caliper inch. And the caliber of each tree removed is to be measured by taking the diameter at breast height of each tree.
Okay, and the trust is put in the city And it's not, there's not further negotiations on what this cost is going to be. Is that, I just want to make sure that's the case as far as in the
According to this, it says that the irrigation, landscaping, repair, the planting of the new trees, and the removing of the trees are at the expense of Canyon Outdoor Media, and it's approved by an approved contractor. And then in addition to that, they'll pay the value of the trees that are being removed.
Okay.
So I think it does answer that question.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the motion was covering all that.
And just for
Thanks.
clarification, that's why I asked the question on what's the caliper of the 4 trees. We're talking about putting in 8 inches total caliper for the 4 going back in, but we're probably going to be getting 6 to 12 inches per tree. There's basically 3 large trees that are going to be coming out that'll be replaced someplace else at the discretion of our forester and staff, whether it's in the park or someplace other than that. But at least we have class 1 street trees going back in, which will basically maintain the beautification attempt, and then the variation of the tree types too might be pleasing. So.
Okay, is there further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mucci,
No.
Levi,
No.
Bauer,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
So is that 4?
Yep.
Okay. We are done with that item. There you go. Thank you.
Johnny Appleseed, no plants and trees.
Okay, so we're moving, it is now time for our public hearings, and we are running a little bit late. Our first public hearing this evening is action item 6.1 is a zoning map amendment from RS6, which is single-family residential, 6,000 square feet, to community business for a 0.3 acre strip of land mistakenly zoned RS6 during the platting and zoning process of Summit Ridge subdivision. And due to an incorrect legal description submitted for zoning boundaries, and this is for JUB Engineers, Wendy Shrieff, representing M3 ID Greenhurst LLC, is the applicant with us this evening. Hi. So would you like to come forward? Go ahead and state your name and address and tell us a little bit about what we're needing to accomplish. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Wendy Shrieff. I'm a planner with JEB Engineers. My business address is 2760 Excursion Lane, Meridian, Idaho 83642. And I think what we're here tonight, it's much simpler than what I heard with the tree ordinance. Very straightforward. I'll just kind of explain what we're trying to do. When we were originally platting Summit Ridge subdivision, we created legal descriptions prior to platting. And one of the legal descriptions was a little bit smaller than it should have been. And this parcel is located on the southwest corner of Greenhurst and Midland. It's a future commercial parcel. And then the back part of that parcel was erroneously zoned RS6, so it was on residential. We're requesting to rezone that BC, community business, so that it matches the rest of the commercial parcel. So that is my request this evening.
Thank you so much. Council, do you have any questions regarding what we're doing? Okay, you'll get to come back after public hearing, so thank you
very
so
much.
much. Okay, staff.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Doug Critchfield, Planning Department. So the location of the property is south of West Greenhurst and west of South Midland. This is a 0.3 acre parcel. The surrounding land uses are single-family residential and community business to the east, which this parcel is adjacent to. The comprehensive plan for this area is low-density residential. The surrounding land use settings also are in the low and medium density residential land use settings. There are utilities available to the site, and access is from West Greenhurst and South Midland, and that is for the community business parcel on the corner. So this is adjoined to that. This is a detail of the plat, and the arrows pointing to the segment of land that the applicant is looking to zone BC or transition the zone from RS6 to BC. We did receive several comments from the public agencies. Those are listed in your staff report. We did not receive any correspondence from the general public. The findings are also listed in the staff report, in that the rezone of the subject property to BC is reasonably necessary in order to allow the applicant to use the property as proposed, and secondly, that the rezone of the subject property BC is in the interest of the property owners and is compatible with the adopted comprehensive plan at the time of annexation. The condition of approval are also listed in the staff report. And this is the requested action item. As listed, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Doug. Does council have any questions for staff at this time?
Do we know the future plans that this owner has?
No, we'd have to ask the applicant.
Okay. You didn't ask him?
No, we're just dealing with the zoning part of
Okay.
it right now. So, yeah.
But our applicant, when they come back, could actually share that information. Okay. Any other questions for Doug at this time? Okay, so this is a public hearing, and we do not have anyone that signed up in advance to speak on behalf of or in opposition to this. Is there anyone here this evening? And I don't see anyone here that would be signed up. It's mostly staff. And so seeing none, this would be an opportunity for our applicant to come forward and possibly answer a request from council. And thank you.
Mayor, council members, again, Wendy Sharif with JAB Engineers. And to answer your question, we do not have any current plans for developing that parcel. We've been concentrating on developing Summit Ridge subdivision. We currently have phase 4. We're getting ready to start pre-construction on, which is immediately to the west of this parcel, but we do not have any proposed plans at this time for that commercial property. Generally, commercial will follow rooftops. I think once the residential develops, then that will be developed later on, but there is no current proposal on that parcel. What the situation we would run into if we do not have this rezone approved is we would have, it's all one parcel. The back part of the parcel, with it being residential, if we were to have parking in the rear or any type of commercial use, it would not comply with that existing zoning, the RS6 zoning. So the BC is really to bring the entire parcel into compliance. Any other questions?
Is there a canal ditch right there?
Mayor, council members, yes, we do. We have a Boise Project Canal, which is located to the west of this parcel, which we're dealing with Summit Ridge 4. So we have an existing license agreement, and we've coordinated with Boise Project on any type of structures that are in that easement, or even grading is permitted through Boise Project for that easement. So they did submit comments, just putting us on notice that we would need a license agreement for any work being done in that easement.
Are there any other questions for our applicant? Okay, any other comments you wanted to make? You good?
We're looking for your approval this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so at that, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, council discussion.
Mayor,
Yes.
I don't want to put words in Councilman Bauer's mouth, but I'm wondering if he is thinking ahead as far as if we approve the rezone and we're approving it to BC, what are the allowable uses? And knowing what the allowable uses are would probably make us more comfortable in approving that. But secondly, if I might go a little bit further with that, is when it comes to the process where they are deciding how they're going to use that community business piece, will that come before the city council, and will we have the opportunity to say yes or no?
Yeah, thank you. So, Mayor, Councilmember Levi, the BC zone is a fairly broad zone. There are lots of different commercial uses that would be allowed in this zone as permitted by code. It will go through design review, whatever is proposed. That's largely, though, just for the the design part of it. If it's a permitted use, it would not need to come through the council. If it requires a conditional use permit, then it would go through the Planning and Zoning Commission. So.
Can you expand on the allowable uses by any chance?
Well, there are several. There's about 5 pages of listed uses that are allowed. It could be retail, commercial. It could be there could be restaurants. There could be a multifamily development with a conditional use permit. There's a whole host of different types of commercial types of development. It's a fairly broad category. So.
Thank you. Are there further discussion of council?
Mayor, kind of like the last city council where we had that wonderful lady just come and she got feedback of the whole community and this is an area that's kind of like that area. There's a lot of people that live around this area. So I just think we should be, hopefully they would be cognitive of what a lot of these people want. And then a pretty high density area with a lot of houses around here of what the people would want. But, it is a free market. But that would be appreciated to the people that live around there. I'm someone that lives right next to that. So that's, where my curiosity comes. So.
Thank you. Any further discussion with council? So what is the will of the council?
Mayor Kling,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the action as presented to us to allow the zoning map amendment for this 0.3 acre strip of land as presented to us with staff's findings and recommended conditions of approval.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes. Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
There you go. Okay. And moving to our second public hearing of this evening, this is an action item, and this is the amendment of the land use table in City Code Title 10.3.2, eliminating any new storage unit or RV boat storage from locating in the city of Nampa boundaries, or an amendment of land use. So we have 4 different options this evening. Do I need to read all of these? Or is that important that I read every single one in here? Maybe I should, just to make sure.
Mayor, no, we've moved on to the action item. It's on the agenda.
Right.
If there's a motion to approve it, then we'll read the title. Yeah, but at this point, you can just proceed with the hearing.
Thank you. It just gets kind of long. So this is the discussion about our storage units. And needless to say, Doug has worked with staff, Doug Waterman has worked with staff this evening to bring forward 4 options that I trust everyone has read through these ordinance options. And so this evening, it is a public hearing. We'll start with staff as our applicant and staff providing some overview as to the work that was done. Then we'll open it up for public hearing and then have opportunity to discuss. Thank you, Rodney.
Council, Rodney Ashby, Director of Planning and Zoning. I am not going to read this either, this item, but I will get to each section that we're proposing and go through more detail as we go through it. So this is the history. I'm not going to go over all the history. It's in the staff report, but essentially I'd like to get to the end there. On August 17th, City Council approved the 2,500-foot buffer and directed staff to bring ordinances back. And in that meeting, the city attorney recommended we bring several different ordinances based on city council's comments. And so there were 4 different areas that we proposed ordinances for. Storage developments are only allowed with mixed use, and I'll get into some detail there. Remove the ability to construct new storage units altogether. Allow storage developments only in the IL Light Industrial Zoning District, and then any other reasonable limitations on storage unit developments. That was the direction he gave us. So we came back with these 4 ordinances, and I've numbered them 1 through 4 here. And I wanted to give you that the response from Planning and Zoning Commission on September 22nd. So the first ordinance was to prevent any new storage units to develop. We clear that land use table completely. And that was recommended denial, reiterating the need to let the market regulate what uses should be allowed in the city. So the bold is the Planning and Zoning Commission's statement there. Number 2 was an ordinance returning conditional use permit approval authority to the Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission. They recommended approval of that one. Number 3 was the ordinance requiring new storage developments use a minimum of 25% of the property for uses permitted in that zone other than storage and located between the storage facilities and the roadway, but not to exceed 150-foot setback. And I'll get into some details in a second on that one. It's a little bit more complex. So, but the commission recommended denial, arguing that to require 25% an alternative use as an alternative use than what the developer intended is unfair and discourages development. Number 4 was ordinance eliminating any new storage unit or RV boat storage from locating in the city of Nampa boundaries except in the IL zone with the approval of a conditional use permit. And they recommended approval, but they recommended some changes to that one. They recommended adding back in not only the IL, as was recommended in the ordinance, but also leaving in the BN, the BC, GB1, and GB2 zones. And essentially that removes the 3 zones from the land use table which currently allow public storage through a CUP. The BF, or freeway business, the IP, industrial park, and the RP, residential professional zones. And then I just provided a quick summary at the end there. They had some feelings about this approach, and they said that they felt that the city should not put in place a condition that will force public storage to be clustered in one specific area, because the demand for storage is in different areas of the community from residentially zoned districts. So the applicable regulations, just wanted to touch base on this. A zoning code amendment or any code amendment should the city council needs to find that it would be reasonably necessary in the interest of the public and in harmony with the goals and or policies of the adopted comprehensive plan. So the legal criteria for approving a zoning code amendment is different than the conditional use permit that you've seen come before you for storage units. So storage units for a specific case in a specific location, if you're to approve a conditional use permit, you're limited by the criteria for approving the conditional use permit. And in the past, that's been a concern of the city council, because you weren't able to say yes or no, you were just able to base your decision off of those criteria for conditional use permits. This is different. This allows you to set a precedent for the entire city. So any storage units coming in would be required to meet the zoning code. And so again, that underlying section is really where the findings that you need to find in this case. So option 1, as I mentioned, is to just remove all of those conditions, conditional use permits off of the table. So no new storage units would be allowed. Option 2 is the amendment of land use table, 1032, service and office land use, building occupancy type note 4, reverting the approval or denial authority for a storage development conditional use permit from City Council back to the Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission. That was expressed as an interest by some members of the City Council last time we met on this. So again, giving that back to Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, number 3, this was recommended by the commission to have some kind of mixed use as a requirement for any storage unit. So this is a proposal to have a minimum of 25% of the property for uses permitted in that zone that are other than storage and located between the storage facilities. So if you take this first example on the left here, storage units, if the property is the full box, the storage units could be in the back, and 25% of that property would need to be, so if it's in a BC zone, maybe it's restaurant or office space. It could be a variety of commercial uses in that kind of highlighted blue area out in the front, if this is the right of way to the bottom of the screen. However, for larger properties that are deeper in depth than 750 feet, 25% may be reduced and setback may not equal or be greater than 150 feet from right of way. So perhaps in this situation, it may be that this highlighted blue area would be 23% or 20%, as long as it doesn't exceed that 150 feet. So I'm going to pause there for a second. I wonder if there might be questions about that one.
Mayor, I have a question. Rodney, so are you saying that they cannot exceed the 150 feet, or they can, if they choose to,
Yeah.
exceed the 150 feet?
They could if they choose to.
Okay, so the minimum would be 150 unless it's the scenario that you're talking about of the property depth exceeding 750.
Correct.
Because if it's a mixed-use development, sometimes maybe half and half, or 2/3 and a third in the back would be storage. So
This is simply, Mayor and Council, this is simply just stating what the city would require of them as a minimum.
Yes. Rodney, would that remove the 2,500-foot boundary that's already been set, or does that remain?
The 2,500-foot boundary that's been set is still in place and would continue to be in place.
Mayor? Yes. Thank you. Rodney, looking at option 4, IL zones, are they scattered throughout the city so that the storage units could be put in locations where they could be utilized? And the second part of that question is, what are the allowable uses in an IL zone? So if we're looking at a residential area, what are we looking that we would allow them to put in that zone?
Yeah, great question. Mayor and Council, the IL, so I think there were 2 parts to that question. Where were the IL zones? And they're more clustered than probably any other zone. We have a lot in the northern part. We just annexed in a good deal of IL properties into the city off of like Midland and Eustic, for instance. That's an industrial area on our comprehensive plan. There are also the industrial areas that are existing currently just north of the freeway, like near the sugar beet factory, that area. We have a few other spots where IL is, but it's certainly not distributed throughout the city. The industrial areas is intended to be separate from other uses like residential because of its impact. IL is typically, we're seeing some manufacturing. The sugar beet factory is actually a IH zone, so that's a heavy industrial. The Sorrento is another one that would be much more heavy. So we're seeing a lot more, in the IL, we're seeing a lot more of just smaller manufacturing and office space related to manufacturing. So that's primarily what we see. And what was the second part of your question?
The allowable uses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Hear that follow-up, Mayor? So looking again then at option 4 with that explanation, the propensity of the storage units being placed where they could be utilized is really limited. But at the same time, the idea of going back to my earlier comment several meetings ago that we have storage units on our entrances to our city is really not a good use of that welcoming spirit when people come in. So I'm trying to find the compromise. And if you know one of these would work better than in my thinking where I'm going, is I want them to be where the people need them without them being intrusive. But secondly, I don't want them to be in a place where they're the gateway to the city. And I just lost the third thing I was going to say. I'm so sorry. And I'm also a very strong proponent of saying, as you've heard me say before, let's not have 8 zones with the allowable use of storage units. So I hope you can see, or if I express that correctly, my kind of the challenge I'm having with which one of these options would I pick. So could you kind of help narrow my thinking?
Mayor and council, I'm not going to tell you a direction to take. I mean, certainly that's your prerogative.
I don't want you to tell me what to do. I want you to lead me maybe to where I need to be
Sure.
looking more targeted.
So those kind of considerations were things that the Planning and Zoning Commission considered as well. That's why they placed some of those zones back in. However, a gateway business zone is intended to be on our gateway. So if that's a concern, then you're welcome to remove that one. I mean, we're already proposing removal of all of these on one of the options. So if there are specific zones you feel would be better to leave in place for storage units, that's certainly something you could do.
So our GB1 is that our gateway?
That's the gateway business.
And 2?
In gateway business 2 is also.
Okay, which is what I think I hear Councilwoman Levi saying, we'd like to protect our gateways. The other thing I was just thinking about in here is the light industrial area. The goal with light industrial is jobs and manufacturing. If we put storage units in light industrial, then we're absolutely not accomplishing our goal with light industrial. Because if it goes back to, does a storage unit produce jobs? Does it produce good taxable revenue in the city? And it would take up very valuable space that would, like our North Nampa industrial area. Boy, my hope is that we have jobs there. Because that's for the longevity of our community. We need to have good paying jobs in our community and bring business here, not fill it with storage units. So.
Mayor, if I may follow up with yours, because I'm not understanding. Can you give me the reasoning of the Planning and Zoning Committee as far as why they were suggesting the IL zone? What was their reasoning
So
on that?
actually, it was a recommendation from one of the city council members here. The last time we met, it was requested that we look at the IL zone as one zone that would allow the storage units. So that was I took that recommendation and brought back an ordinance for you to consider.
Okay. So Mayor, if I may put Doug on the spot, making sure he's staying awake over there. So why in the world, from a financial standpoint, I can't see, why in the world would we want to put storage sheds from a tax revenue standpoint in an IL zone? Do you have any explanation why you would do that from a financial standpoint?
Councilman, on that topic, I don't have valuable input for you.
Okay.
I can gladly research that, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Not your typical finance question. It's more of a land use question and taxable values, so he wasn't prepared probably.
No, I put him on the spot all the time. He loves me. Okay.
Okay, so we'll let Rodney finish his staff report, then we'll move to public hearing, and then we'll come back to discussion.
So we sent this out for agency correspondence and just received a response from engineering that they had no comment on the matter. The recommended findings, I've already talked to you about that. And I placed on here possible motions that you could take. And I noted again, just on the bottom here, the zones that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for number 4 to be added back in. So they're allowed existing currently allowed with a conditional use permit. All of these 4 zones listed here, BN, BC, GB1, and GB2. So they're just suggesting that those be left back in.
And is that it?
That's
Okay,
it.
perfect. So I think let's move to public hearing, and then we can come back to questions. Can we do that? And I believe, Debbie, let's take a quick glance. Is there anyone signed up? No. No. So that's why I thought, let's move to public hearing. So it is a public hearing. We do not have anyone signed up to speak. Would you guys like to talk? I saw that nudge. So no comments? I think you're the only. Any other comments, citizens? Okay. So that is the question to ask, if there's anyone here that didn't sign up that would intend to speak. So seeing none, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now council discussion and questions for Rodney.
Mayor, I'll just
Comments?
make mainly a comment. Were you going to go?
Nope.
You got it if you haven't. They've heard enough from me already. Okay, I'm not, I don't love storage sheds, but Ms. Claiborne in the last meeting kind of shook my whatever is up there a little bit. And so I'm getting mixed messaging though over the several weeks. Do we have too many storage sheds or don't we? Because my understanding was we had way too many storage sheds compared to other municipalities.
Mayor and council, I think I can speak to that. We have looked at multiple professional studies or reviews of the city's storage unit market. And we have found that we are oversaturated for storage units. However, I will say that in certain areas of our community, there are not storage units. And so the willingness of a resident who has an RV and wants it nearby their home, maybe that means that there's a demand for storage units in that specific area because there aren't any in that area right now. So it's a little bit of a mixed answer, I know.
So if I may follow up, Mayor, so if we allow storage units, I shouldn't say sheds, units, are we able to control it all as far as what the percentage would be RV storage and what would be just extra garbage that people haven't gotten rid of?
We could bring back a new zoning code amendment, but right now they are listed as storage units and RV.
So they pretty much then from these 4 options could pretty much put in whatever they wanted to, whether it would be RV or small units for.
That's correct.
Okay, and that's what I don't want. So that's what I'm trying to get away from.
So I'm just listening to what you're saying. So I guess we would hope that whoever is putting it in is actually doing the market research to see what the need is. Because it sounds like there is a need for some of the RV and boat storage.
Yeah, that's what I learned
Versus
last council
the-
meeting. Yes, Mayor.
Right.
Yeah.
So currently, just to be clear, we have an ordinance in place that has the 2,500 foot barrier, correct?
That's correct.
So that does create some distancing, right? And
It
it does, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I think I can show you.
Mayor?
We've seen this slide before. That's right. This is the slide there. It's difficult to see, but essentially it kind of comes down to those residential areas that are not near storage units, right in this area here, that would be possible for storage units, and then on the outskirts of the community out here.
Because each one of those is referencing a storage unit, which is a lot, right? Okay. Councilman Bauer.
I'll say I kind of agree and disagree on this with some of the statements that were made. I disagree that a storage unit, wouldn't produce any jobs, because there's a storage unit, people have to go buy the RV, which they may go buy it in Nampa. They may put a TV in the RV, which they could pay someone from Nampa to do, or go pay from one of our stores. So there's all sorts of, just more to it than it doesn't provide jobs. There's a lot more, economic stuff going on here that does benefit a lot of people in the community. And I do think it's much more of a demand than what we think. Idaho is one of the most recreational places in the world. People love to go into the mountains. Everyone likes to hunt. Everyone likes to fish. Everyone likes to go camp. They're not in the hunting and fishing. They love to go hike and mountain bike and stuff. And Idaho is probably just the best place on the planet to do any of that stuff. So there'll always be a demand here. That being said, I do agree with a little bit with the mayor saying, especially when it comes to our industrial areas, we need to protect those areas because those can really provide really good jobs if it has, it has sufficient power, electric things going to those areas that other units or other land areas cannot produce. A small company with 50 employees just can't be matched in other areas. So that's why I have been vocal about protecting our industrial areas, and I would like to get storage units out of that area completely. And then perhaps we can have the other storage units just come to council, so we stop, I guess, or if you're okay with what we have in place. If you're not, if you want something more, then maybe just bring it to council and let the council decide. Because last week it showed that there is situations where it's needed. I think we all voted yes, right, on that, if I'm right? No. Anyway, in my opinion, that situation showed that there is some situations where it's needed. It may come to council again and we don't like it because it's in the gateway of our city. So I don't know if we can just kind of end the cycle and just have it come to council every time if it's a storage unit.
And it's currently there. I have a quick question. One of the challenges that we've been facing with storage units is that we don't have the ability to deny a conditional use permit. You almost have to approve it based on the guidelines, which is putting us as a council, talk for all of us, in a very difficult place when we're trying to rule, because there really isn't a basis to say no on a conditional use permit. And I think that's one of the issues that we need to address. And I fully support what Councilwoman Levi said as far as our gateways. We need to protect our gateways, but in a conditional use permit, if we can't deny it because it's in a gateway, I mean, it could be that there is some place that would be considered a gateway that you do the mix, right, to where it's mixed use, that it worked. In fact, if that had been a mixed use in the one off of North Side, it would have been a much better environment. Unfortunately, it wasn't. So what I'm confused about, long comment for a question, how do we get past this issue that we cannot deny a conditional use permit request?
Mayor and council, what you're running up against is a statutory framework that was put in place. There's a fairly standard statutory framework. It's the Local Land Use Planning Act. The objective is to obligate a city to make land use decisions early and consistently so that developers know, I can do this, I can't do that. There's no way to create a situation where you're abiding by the statute and have essentially fiat to say thumbs up, thumbs down on conditional use permits. The opportunity to exercise generalized preference and talk about the generalized policy, talk about people coming in and out of the gateway, that's excellent, and that's what you're doing tonight. I'm hearing some issues with trying to pick the right zone where things could be allowed. Another thing that could be done is to pick, as has been done, we've got a 2,500-foot buffer from storage units. There are other points on the map that you could tether a buffer to, like an interstate. But you're right. You're always going to have the statute standing in the way of really simplifying the restraints on a council or P&Z decision to thumb up, thumb down conditional use permit. That was legislatively for better or worse on purpose. And so there's not a good path to get exactly what you're talking about. There is a good path, at least in my opinion, to accomplish the things I'm hearing you talk about accomplishing. I hope that helps.
It
Yeah.
does a little bit, yes.
Doug,
Thank you.
is there, isn't there an appeal period after a conditional use is approved or denied?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why the city could not be the one appealing the decision?
Are you talking about, sorry, Mayor Councilman Haverfield, you're talking about pushing the conditional use permit back to P and Z and having
Right.
the, yes. So Mayor and Councilman Haverfield and Council, the standard process for a conditional use permit is it's heard by the P and Z Commission. If someone objects to what P and Z has done, they can appeal it to council. For storage units, at this point, based on, and Rodney has the timeline, council asked the conditional use permits for storage units be heard by council rather than P and Z. And part of the rationale for that was because there's no automatic, council cannot appeal a decision of P and Z, only the applicant or an affected person could. So if a decision is made by P and Z that no one objects to, then council doesn't get a say one way or the other. And it's just final. So that was the reason for pulling it up.
So just for clarification then, no one that's employed by the city could file or basically file an appeal to a decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, and Council, I don't think that they qualify as an affected person, which is the category of persons allowed to appeal a P and Z decision.
Because I'm all in favor of having the Planning and Zoning Commission handle conditional use permits as they did before for this type of project. The mayor's concern, I thought maybe we would be able to get around that by the appeal period if someone, if the city could file an appeal, if the mayor or one of the council members or even a staff member, if it is anyone employed by the city, then that puts it back in a position where we don't have that control then.
Right. Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, I think it'd be different if the Planning and Zoning Commission literally violated the law in some way, but that's a different setting than where essentially staff is making a determination that the P and Z Commission was wrong in their deliberation and is exercising essentially a quasi-judicial preference to pull it up to council. And I don't see a good path for that. If the P and Z Commission were to approve something directly in violation of the statute, then staff has a reason to bring that up to council to object to that. But staff is not in a good position to exercise a policy preference and use that as the basis for an appeal to council.
Okay, so Mayor, if I might, then Doug, basically the process would be if it was remanded back to the P and Z Commission to do the conditional use permits, it would be an adjacent property owner or someone that would have a financial interest in the decision adjacent maybe to the property that got the conditional use that would have to file the appeal. That would come before the city council then.
Right. So, and that's the individual, sorry, Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, that would be who would be the interested person for the purpose of an appeal. Again, adopting option 2, which pushes the approval back to P and Z. If that was the only thing adopted tonight, then yes, Planning and Zoning Commission with the framework that's in place now would move ahead with approving or denying storage unit conditional use permits. They remain conditional in the zones they're conditional in. And that would be the sort of end of council's control. But the other 3 options, although option 1 precludes the necessity for options 2, 3, and 4 entirely, but options 3 and 4 are council affirmatively going down to P and Z and saying, you still get to do that quasi-judicial action and make that decision, but here are some hard lines that you're not allowed to cross. So if council were to put in place the buffer requirement there in number 3, P and Z is bound by that. So council is still participating in the conditional use permit process, but rather than doing so on a case-by-case basis, they're doing so at the policy level. And so far, for the most part, the concerns with storage units that I've heard are policy concerns. And so this is the appropriate lever by which to pull the code and make those changes.
So Councilwoman Munchie.
Thank you. Douglas, with that in mind, did you say planning and zoning is still held to the same statute?
Mm-hmm.
So it really would be, unless there was policy put in place, they would still be beholden to the same statute that we wrestle with every time?
But they're not, right now, conditional use permits are not going to planning and zoning.
Right, but
They're
if
coming
we
to us.
looked at
If we revert
sending
it back to them.
them, then we would have, they would still have the same issue that we have, but we would not have a say in what is approved.
So Mayor and Councilman Mucci, yes, that is true. Now let's say we've got our 4 options. You adopt option 2, which pushes it back to P and Z, and then you adopt option 1, which removes the use from the land use table entirely. So now P and Z does have the conditional use authority to hear those, but as the council, you've precluded anyone from even applying for a conditional use permit to begin with. So you adopt number 2, which pushes it back to P and Z, and number 3 or 4, again, it goes back to P and Z. The difference is now they also have more legislatively adopted framework that there are requirements in there that they are required to abide by. And the same would be true if you adopted number 1 and nothing else. The authority for conditional use permits would remain with council, but you would never hear any of them because no one could apply for them. So yes, if you put the authority back with the Planning and Zoning Commission, they will have to wrestle with whatever code exists at the time that the conditional use permit comes before them. But options 1, 3, and 4 are for you to change the framework they wrestle inside of and maybe make it easier or change the outcomes based on additional requirements that you put in place zone-wide, affecting every property owner for a policy reason.
Thank you. Mayor, follow-up comment. I'm glad we're having this discussion tonight because as much as I agree with part of what Councilman Bauer said, I think our gateways have to be protected. And I think too, when you see these storage unit applications come before us, they're for multiple acres typically that we don't get back. They just do not generate a lot of jobs and the tax revenue. And so how, when we're a quickly growing city and what in 2 years that we'd approve today would we say, gosh, if we only had that 10 acres back that is storage units. I don't want to make quick decisions because it's what seems good and really short ourselves 2 years, 3 years down the road for some real development opportunity. And also I do think that the entryways to our city, I love the trees. I know we had that long conversation, but I think it looks welcoming. It looks beautiful to drive up and see, wow, this community really put some time and thought into the way you enter the city. I was driving, past Shiloh Inn today, and it looks so different as you're headed out to the sugar beet factory versus coming over Karcher. And I think it really does make a statement about what community we live in and what we stand for and value and how we welcome folks into our community. And I don't think this issue is ever going to go away. And I think last week, or our last council meeting, I think was maybe an anomaly. We don't often hear that. And, I was glad for those folks that, she had done so much research and had, a contingency of folks here to support that decision. But it isn't often like that. And so I think, how do we guard through policy this really important land use decision when we can't get it back? Thanks.
And I think what brought us here today were we had some decisions on storage units and land use that this council, the comment in the discussion at the council level was that the elected officials are the ones that are being held accountable for those decisions, but they're not getting to make the decisions. And the city is looking at the elected officials saying, why did you allow that under your watch? And our elected officials said, we didn't, because it was being decided at the planning and zoning level. And so I think, and I was the one that recommended that we've got to get a handle on this because as Councilwoman Munchie was saying, and it's something that I heard from a different city a while back, when you put something in a piece of ground, you've got 100 to 150 years. It's not coming back. We've got a finite amount of ground in our community, and how we develop that ground is going to set the stage for the tax in the future, jobs, the livability of our city, even trees along our corridors. That's livability. There's an economic opportunity that comes with having beautiful corridors and having a lovely community and making sure we have the right balance in jobs and the taxable valuation that comes in. So that's what we're wrestling with here today. It shouldn't be a personal issue with planning and zoning and who's making a decision. It is the people that have run for office that are elected that ultimately are going to be held accountable. And so I support decisions being made unless we put some barriers around it to make right decisions long term. But it is very difficult on the CUP side when we're not allowed to not agree with something because we're not by statute to approve something in the conditional use permit. So that's kind of what brought us here. Now we need to just figure out how can we move it forward. So.
The Mayor, if I may, I personally like number 3. I think we need to, I would like to have, I don't like micromanaging, but I don't think we're on the same wavelength with the P&Z. They're wonderful people, but I think we need to control that. So if we can control, we're not going to do CB1 or CB2, or we can put that, I like to have the developers know if they're going to spend the time, at least if they have opportunity to build sheds, what zones they at least have a chance of, even though there is still an opportunity that we may turn it down. So I would like to give them an open window saying, hey, if we're going to do any more storage units, this is the zoning where you're going to possibly come before us and be allowed. So that's what I personally am looking for. And I would want mixed use no matter what. I'm not in favor of just putting in 100%. And of course, as I said before, I'm really in favor of the RVs and so on. I'm just, if there's any way we can control the percentage of what goes in, I would like.
So just for clarity.
Yeah.
For example, if you're going to make a motion, for clarity, right now, the approval process stays with the council.
Right.
Are you intending for that to stay?
Yes, at this point. Yes.
And the 2,500-foot barrier would stay. You would approve item number 3, in addition to the 2 that are currently part of ordinance. Is that what I hear you saying?
In addition to the 2,500, and what's the other one?
It stays with council on the approval.
Okay.
So
And then, like I said, I would like from if I was a developer, I'd like to know what my opportunity zones are.
Right.
To come before council. And that's what I don't have the answer for, is if anyone else does.
Is that business neighborhood, business commercial?
Yeah, IL is not, I will not vote for an IL.
Right, or GB1 or GB2. So is it business neighborhood? Is it business commercial? Because I don't see any of that noted in here.
I'm sorry, can you ask the full question again?
So I think what I'm hearing Councilman Brunner say is that we possibly would support, and I don't know how others feel, but we're looking for the zones that we would say, yes, that we would consider that conditional use permit in that zone. We need to be clear to developers where we're not going to allow it. And if that is GB1 is out, GB2 is out, freeway business is out, industrial park is out, residential professional zones are out, is a business neighborhood a yes? Is business commercial a yes?
So, Mayor, clearly that's your decision which one, but I think the question is where does a BN zone fit? Maybe is like what's the purpose of the BN zone? So neighborhood business is a transition zone similar to RP, where you have it near residential properties, but it's intended to be a commercial use. So it's kind of that transition, and that might be a good place for it if you want to locate those storage facilities near residential. And not just allow them in the residential zone. The GB1 and the GB2 zones are gateway zones right there.
And I think we're hearing that we're not interested in those zones. So what are the zones we would be interested in? If you could help us identify that.
Yeah. The BC zone is pretty widespread. It's on the Caldwell Boulevard. It's on 12th Avenue. It's there's a good amount of BC. Some of the one you heard tonight, the Summit, what's the name of the subdivision? Just Summit Ridge.
Greenhurst.
That was a BC zone on the corner. So there are places, in the past, we had these little nodes that were on corners, and that you could have a commercial zone on the corner of a residential area. It was intended to provide some commercial property near the residential that people could walk to. So there are those business commercial zones throughout the city.
Okay, I'm just going to interrupt because I think we're just carrying on. I'm sorry, Rodney, but I'm just going to make a motion. So I'm in a motion of option 3 in a BN and a BC zone, and we'll have the 2,500 foot distance, and it'll come before council for any developer who's interested in putting in storage units in a BN or BC zone.
RV? Are you specific about the RV?
Well, I don't know if we can be.
Okay.
I don't have an answer. I would love to be specific on that, but I don't have an answer that we can be.
I'm going to second that.
I think it's a good motion, actually.
No, I
Thank
don't
you
know.
for cutting to the chase. So I support that because I think there has to be an avenue for storage units at the right place at the right time, like we experienced last week, and trying to figure it out. And that gives us that transitional piece. So what my thought is, if we approve this in the public hearing, then what we will do is we will ask you to come back with the final ordinance, because it's going to have to be rewritten outside of public hearing. Can we do that? Can we approve the,
So, Mayor and Council, here's the motion I heard. You're going to deny approval of ZTA 018-20, which is the outright elimination. That's number 1.
okay,
You're going to deny approval of ZTA 019-20, which was putting authority back with P&Z. You're going to approve ZTA 020-20, which requires that buffer, so the mixed use essentially. And you're going to approve ZTA 021-2020, except that,
Doug,
yes,
I think instead of going to 4, we should probably go to 1 and then add them back in, BN and the BC zones.
that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to deny ZTA 021-2020. The very beginning of the motion, which was the denial of ZTA 018-20, will be amended to be, you're going to approve ZTA 018-20, except that you will continue to allow storage units to be a conditional use in the, was it BN and BC zones? So the consequence of that will be they'll be removed from all zones except BN and BC. It will still come to council for conditional use approval. It will have that requirement for the 150-foot setback or 25%, depending on the location. The 2,500-foot buffer was not on the agenda for tonight, so it will stay in place. And again, you're not changing the location for the conditional use permit. So that should accomplish what I heard Councilman Bruner say.
So I amend my motion if need be to whatever our legal just said. Okay.
Mayor, question?
and seconded,
I'll
right?
second that,
Okay.
yes.
Question?
Councilwoman Lecce.
So with the 25% of the property for uses permitted in that zone, we just heard that there's 4 pages of permitted uses in the BC.
zone.
Mhm. So could I just have a tape, like a shop that just sells some tape and packing supplies?
Yes, you could.
So I could still really just be a storage unit entirely, but just have that percent of the property dedicated to selling shipping supplies?
Yeah, good question. Mayor, Councilwoman Machi, we've had this situation before where people have occupied a storage unit and then started a business out of that storage unit. Well, there are different building codes for operating a business out of a facility. So it takes it into a whole nother realm. So you couldn't, what makes a storage unit a public storage unit is that people are storing their things there, but they're not operating their business there. It's just storage.
Okay, Mayor, follow up. But I could use that 25% of the square footage designated to another use just to sell shipping and packing for a storage unit.
But we, Mayor, we also though then coming before us, we can deny that. Deny it as a council. So
Possibly, the intent here is it's a separate business, that it is not the office. So I think the clarity is that if you're running a storage unit, that 25% up front is not intended to be the office associated with the storage unit.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So that would more end up being the office with the storage unit, unless they chose to be a FedEx shipping site or whatever. Yeah.
I believe the ordinance, and I should look at the packet. Mayor, I believe the ordinance says something to the effect of a business not related to the storage unit. Do you remember that, Doug?
That would be the third ordinance.
Mayor and council, it's the at least 25% of the property be used for something other than public storage facilities. So I think that the office of a public storage facility is part of the public storage facilities.
Yeah.
Now, even if the buffer was, if it is the case that somebody can operate a storage unit at that location, only taking advantage of 75% of the property because storage units are so profitable that they can afford to give up a quarter of the property to not operate something else, then yes, that could happen. I think the ordinance, the way it's drafted, deals with it just being the storage facility office. But again, if somebody wants to put in, if it were fiscally feasible to put in a 25% buffer of dummy commercial that didn't generate any revenue, an applicant could do that. Whether or not a storage unit would be sufficiently, would generate enough revenue to be able to afford to do that, I don't know what the saturation study indicated, whether or not someone could afford to operate at basically 0.75 capacity and run an empty commercial building. But yes, that is a possibility.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion on the table and a
Mayor?
second discussion. Yes, Councilwoman Levi?
Thank you. Is it something, perhaps the wording, we need to make it very clear and specific so there's no room for error, that it can't be a business related to that storage unit? I'm sorry.
It's a good question. Currently, it's going back to the actual ordinance. It actually does say that. It says that a conditional use permit shall require at least 25% of the property be used for something other than public storage facilities. Said use is still being required to be consistent with the underlying zone. Said other use shall be located between public storage facilities and public roadway onto which the property fronts. So the percentage of the property used for non-public storage uses may be reduced for properties with a depth in excess of the 750 feet. So I guess that's the question. Does that language actually accomplish what we need, or can we strengthen the language, is what I think I hear you say. Okay, how could we strengthen that language?
Read the first part of it again.
It says a conditional use permit, said use is still being required. I'll read it exactly. A conditional use permit shall require that at least 25% of the property be used for something other than public storage facilities.
Okay, that's what leads me to question, other than public storage facility. So does that mean that people cannot come in and store their goods in that 25%, but it can still be 25% being their office area?
Well, that's not the intent, but I don't know that our language is clear enough to preclude that. And I think that's the comment that I'm hearing. So we need to say in this language it needs to say that 25% of the property shall be used for something other than public storage facilities. And then we need to add something in there. Before it says, and said use is still being required to be consistent with underlying zone. So it need to, I think what the council's saying, we need further clarity to make sure that it doesn't slip into that piece.
And I believe you could add that into your motion.
Okay. that we
So
clarify.
amend.
So moved, is that right?
Yes.
Victor?
I agree.
Okay, so council, it's been moved and seconded, and so we've added to the motion that we want clarifying language in the ordinance that it cannot be the storage unit selling goods, that it cannot be the offices of the storage. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, I'd recommend having the motion include the specific language that you would like added.
Okay.
Would we want to say something about, or
Mayor Kling, just to make it easier, I think if it's a BC zone, it would be anything other than a storage complex that would fall within the BC zone as far as for clarification purposes. That makes it easier because you're not going to define what it's going to be. You're allowing the ordinance or the zone to the allowable uses, so it could be any of those other allowable uses other than a storage unit.
And that's currently what it says. I think maybe we need to just say maybe used for something other than public storage facilities or their offices or selling of their office space. It would need to be other than public storage facilities, their offices, or retail sales. I mean, it's hard to wordsmith the language at this point, but basically what we're saying is the office can't be included. Their retail sales from the storage unit cannot be included in that 25%. Is that correct? I think that's what we're hearing.
Mayor, from a developer standpoint, what will likely happen is that front section will be sold off. If they're developing storage complex, they'll sell off the front section to someone else for another use. That's usually what happens. I'm working on 2 projects right now that have that type of a setup. So as a mixed use, it's just another landowner developing a use specific for themselves, and then the back section is behind that use. So again, it falls within the criteria of the BC zone. If it's in that or a BN zone, we've limited to that already. I think we're splitting hairs in a sense, trying to define something that we don't need to. I think it's already pretty well defined.
I think the concern is if we're not clear in the language, then someone could actually put their offices, if they really wanted to get picky in the language of the ordinance, they could actually put the offices in front in the 25% rather than the storage, because it's just relating to the storage units. And so I think we're wanting to be clear that the office portion, because several storage units actually sell tape and supplies and they rent U-Haul trailers and all of that in the front of their storage.
Sure.
And so we're saying that that is not part of the 25%.
And keep in mind that, again, if it's a BC or BN zone, it's subject to design review. So the criteria of visual enhancements have to be applied to that facade, whatever it might be. So a storage complex has a different set of criteria. So even if it was a small portion of the front section developed for office use, like if it was U-Haul or some other type of a business there, we're not going to deny U-Haul from being able to have a business in front of the storage complex. They're all together separate, but there's a commonality of uses there. So it would be a natural type of an office retail establishment to go in that front section. So that's why I want us to not be so to limit that type of an opportunity for someone.
Actually, I don't, Councilwoman Levi, go ahead.
And one of the key words, if I remember correctly, I believe it was Rodney said that it's a transitional zoning. And when I think about what we've been hearing from a lot of our applicants in our community that have been coming forward is they would like to see little neighborhood cafes or bicycle shops or something of that sort. So I go again back to the fact that we need to be specific in that language, because if it's transitional, let's put something there that's going to be of benefit to the community, that they could walk, they could have coffee or whatever. They can still have their access to the storage, but it's a totally different, my understanding was the purpose of that 25% upfront mixed use was something totally different that benefited the neighborhood and created kind of a community feel.
Which if the something other in the language qualifies, I think the question here is, does the something other qualify? Is that language too vague? Because it does say something used for something other than public storage facilities, but office
Or
related to
sales.
it. Pardon?
Or sales. Why don't we just add
Maybe
sales?
that's what you do, is just say, perfect. Maybe used for something other than public storage facilities or sales.
Now, if you don't want to open up a can of worms, and what the legal said as far as Douglas, I mean, if 25% is enough, I mean, you can always make it 35% or 40% if you want to stop. I mean, people aren't going to they'll sell it like Councilman Haverfield said, but they're not going to. I mean, that's a possibility too, is just adding the percentage of frontage. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
I like the clarification because I think of Greenhurst, and there's already one of those where there's a storage units and U-Haul in front. And so you're still seeing U-Haul, which looks just like storage unit type business fronting the road. And so I think that's really important. If we are really going to put this in as transitional into people's neighborhoods, I think that we want to be mindful of the benefit to those neighborhoods as somebody's coming in and applying to put storage units in. And I think to do our due diligence to ensure that we're protecting people's right to put in storage units in certain zones, but also, you know, the enhancement to residents, I think is really important. And I don't know how many do-overs we get. So I think the language and the nuances are important here.
Okay, so I think Councilman Brunner suggested something other than public storage facilities or sales as the language. And legal was asking for some specific language.
Right. Mayor and Councilwoman Mucci, what has been suggested would not preclude what you were talking about, just to clarify. So, and sales does not going to encompass a U-Haul operation.
Well, you could say, or sales related to the storage facility.
Yeah, that would be.
A lot of interpretation that I have to do on that.
Yeah.
Because if let's say it's a box company, and is that retail or is that related to the storage? It's a case by case basis that I struggle with.
hey, Mayor, if I may, just clarification, and it's still coming before us. So if we feel like, I realize we're not a design review, but if it's not something, I mean, are we going to know what the plan is before we vote on it?
Right.
Or not?
Not always.
Okay, Councilman Haverfield, I just need to make sure your discussions are public. Whatever you're talking about can't be discussed at the bench aside from public. So sorry, we just can't do it. Okay, Councilwoman Levi, thank you.
It comes down to the allowable use. If it's an allowable use in that zone, what do we tell a developer if we don't like it? And so it goes back to that clarification for the developer. When they come in, we want to make it clear to them so they've not invested their time and their money into thinking they're going to do one thing, and they come before us and we're saying, whoa, just a minute, don't think so. And then that's confusing to them.
Mayor and council, it will still, if it's in the BC zone, it will still go before design review. And so you're going to have a facade, you're going to have a good looking building based on our design review requirements up front. I'm a little nervous about specifying every little thing because it makes it difficult for not only the developer but for staff to interpret each of those things. So just personally, and I'm just going to propose this, I would recommend that, as you stated several times, you just add on to shall require that at least 25% of the property be used for something other than public storage facilities or public storage office. just so that we have that office behind. It's related to the storage facility, and then anything out in front is a commercial use according to that zone. And if you don't feel that that's an appropriate location for that zone, that should be done at annexation and zoning or at a possible rezone of the property. That's my recommendation.
Thank you. We needed that. So Councilman Brunner, you have the motion on the table. Is that an acceptable addition to your motion?
I will amend it for the fourth time.
You will. Councilman Rodriguez.
Book a record or anything?
I don't know. It would be good to know.
I'm not even for here.
So Councilman Rodriguez, are you good with that?
Yes, please.
Please. Okay. So with that, is there any further discussion? I think we're going to call for the vote. Roll call. Mucci?
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes. Would have loved it if I would have said no.
You'd have been hung up.
You know, the thing I appreciate about this council is the desire to get it right, and it is not easy. We don't want to make a mistake. We're trying to do the right thing, and I really appreciate the strong consideration and the discussion around it. So thank you. Thank you, Doug Waterman, and thank you, Rodney, for your work. It's appreciated.
Are you leaving?
Clearly, we don't.
We don't.
Okay, so with that, that concludes our public hearings this evening. So we actually, you know what, we've been at it almost 3 hours. I think I would recommend that we take a short, quick bathroom break, and then we're going to come back and wrap up our meeting.
Good idea.
So let's go ahead and take a break.
But he made money on it.
And Daryl, I may not come tomorrow to NDC. I'm trying to look real quickly at your,
I don't think it's probably necessary.
oh, I think I saw that. Text from,
Bill's fell apart.
Kansas City Chiefs won. I didn't say anything.
They did.
I was
They
hoping we'd be
did.
out of here by now.
And they beat the Bills, and poor Rick.
The Bills are going to pots.
Executive session.
There's still another game going on now too, right? Yeah. What was the score approximately? I don't know.
Okay, so I think we're ready to get started with staff communications.
Yeah, no kidding.
So Tom Points.
Yep.
And staff, thank you so much for being here tonight. My goodness. Do you want to go home? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so there's only a few items left, and I just appreciate you guys staying. I'm sorry that you've had to stay so long tonight. So, hi, Tom.
Evening, Mayor, Council. So staff report, I got a few items for you. Irrigation season, so that ended on October 6th. We've got our system, if you don't know, our system's very reliant on surface water. So when the irrigators shut off their water, we shut off our water right behind it, because we don't have enough groundwater to sustain the pressures that are needed in the system. So Boise CUNA, Pioneer Irrigation, and Nampa Meridian Irrigation District all shut off about that time, so we shut off as well. We have a graph in your packet of how much water we delivered this year. So it was about 26,400 acre feet during the irrigation season. So that's about a tenth of the size of a Lucky Peak, just to kind of put it in the volume perspective going through our system. It's kind of interesting. If you look at the graph, you'll notice back in 2015 and 16, we actually delivered more water, which doesn't make sense since we've grown since then. But that's because we've done some operational efficiencies starting in 2016, where we changed we have less waste going to the drains now. So we've changed our pump frequencies, put in some filtration, which changed the pressures in our system and allowed for less waste. So that's an exciting thing to see for water conservation. And then, so we've got a couple of employees that we'd like to recognize. And so one of the things that happens every year is LTAC gives out the Road Scholar and Road Masters awards for the streets department that go through their programs. And so we've had three employees, Matt Albertson, Ryan Swan, and Jeff Hilton, complete the program. LTAC usually comes and gives the award in front of council. There with the COVID, they're not doing that this year. So we did want to recognize these folks that they completed that program. They weren't able to be here today, but we just wanted to at least show their pictures, and they do appreciate the recognition. They pass the word along. And the other one is another LTAC award. So this is an exciting one, Innovation Award for Brad Farner. He's also in streets. He invented an attachment to the street sweeper, so they didn't have to get up on top of the street sweeper and flush it out. They're able to do everything for down below in a safe manner. So I'm always really impressed with the streets people, the water people, and the operation crews. They come up with these ideas and inventions on how to make things safer. And in fact, the manufacturer of this equipment came and took some pictures of it, and was going to try to make this equipment into their future models. So that was a pretty cool thing. Brad also got a $250 check and a free LTAC course from T2. So that's Brad did a good job for us. I appreciate that.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it, what he's accomplished, and the fact that the manufacturer would like to take that idea. Good for him.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I know, that's what I was just sitting here thinking.
$350 versus a patent?
Yeah, exactly.
The next report, we want to talk about the VRT on-demand pilot project. So on October 5th, there was an app put out, VRT put an app out for Nampa and Caldwell in order to use the bus service. And it's basically an Uber app for using a bus. And it's been on, and so far so good. It's been working real well. One of the reasons we wanted to have this, try it out in Nampa was to increase ridership and efficiencies. And so far, the data has shown that it's doing that. So Jeff has this data here. So the old service boarding per hour was 1.5 to 2, and now we're up to 5 to 8. Average wait time, 18 minutes. It used to be at least double that, is what Jeff was telling me. And average ride time, 16 minutes. So they're making efficiencies already and gave us this preliminary data even only in a few weeks. So heard nothing but good things so far. This has been a proven technology that's used in other cities, and Jeff and I talked to VRT about using it here and trying it out. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes. We talked about maybe going out and doing a ride on the bus someday, picking a day to ride with Mayor, and invite the council if you'd like to come with us as well. I guess, Mayor, do you have any comments on
It's
that?
exactly what we're going to do. We want to do a ride the bus so that we're all familiar with it. I'm really pleased with this on demand. I think it was the direction that we needed to go. And it's been some pushing, right? To get to where we have the data, right? To where we have the data. I want to commend Tom and Jeff. We needed your help with VRT, and you've done such a great job. I really appreciate you stepping in, you tracking, working with VRT. It's because of your work that we are where we are, because you've been engaging with them. And so I really appreciate you adding that to your bucket list of things to do. So thank you. And we will find a day and we'll invite everybody to go together.
I thought I could just be anonymous and just. They'll know you, Mayor. They won't know. Get a real.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the last item is the wastewater report, and it's in your packet. There's a 2-page report. I don't have anything significant to mention. You know, things are progressing. Our flare vault got completed on one of our digesters. The Group E, the admin building, is going really well on that remodel. That's ahead of schedule. And then some of our other pieces and parts are still under delay under COVID. So, any questions on wastewater?
No, but can I go back to water?
Yes.
So I just wanted to say, I don't know if you all noticed, I think you got the press release that we had a water main break on 12th Avenue. I just want to applaud staff. You guys got in there, the team that got in, got it repaired, and the asphalt put back. I don't know if that was permanent, but it was open by what, 7 o'clock that night?
Right, 7.
It was fast. And I tell you what, 12th Avenue, especially in that lane, that's a very busy area. And so thank you for the quick response in getting that repaired.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll let the crews know. Yeah, they started about 2 o'clock and we're done by 7, so they got in there and just knocked it out and put some temporary patch in. We'll be back for a permanent patch to get the right mix in for the ITD specs. But
yeah, that was great. You know, I think the one thing, before I sat in this seat, I remember a former council person saying, what happens when you're mayor is that you get familiar with the staff and you can't be objective and et cetera, et cetera. The one thing that I have found in this seat with the opportunity to lead, and as both city manager and mayor, you really become more familiar with the work that's done and the skill set that's required to get the work done. And I tell you, we have an amazing team in our city. We have our directors, Darrell, you acknowledged them earlier tonight, the work that gets done, the skill set that's required, and many times when it comes to wastewater, I get to meet our new employees coming in too, and we've got some great people coming in, that sometimes they're thankless jobs, right? The guys that got in that ditch, right, that get down in the hole, that dig it, that go out and do it, they're the ones that just come to work every day. And I think sometimes we forget the people that make this city run, how important they are. And they don't make high wages, but they're out there and our city depends on them. And I just want to say thank you because they're the people that are our heroes. I think we just forget that's how we have roads to drive on and we have water to drink and wastewater. And, you know, when you flush the toilet, it goes somewhere, right? But those are the people that come to work every single day. And I think we need to never forget the great work that's done. And so thank you. And thank you for leading the team. So.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Mayor Kling,
Mhm.
I have just a quick question. What is Roosevelt going to get opened up again?
You know that one, Jeff or Daniel? Is that one of your projects?
It's the development project for the Roosevelt Village.
Right. Okay, thank you.
He can come back.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm not kidding about having Brad contact a patent attorney. You might
I have to
look
look
at
into that.
Douglas.
I don't know how that works with the city agency.
If
so-
somebody's going to sell his idea,
Yeah.
it might be worth more than
All
$350.
right, I'll have to,
Agreed.
I'll have to ask some questions, so
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. Thank you.
You probably know one. I know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else for me?
I don't
Okay.
think so. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay, we do not have a lot of new business items tonight, so let's start with item number 5.1. This is to authorize the mayor to sign an MOU for funding the Nampa Fire Department administrative staff position by the Nampa Fire Protection District.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Mayor, question.
yes.
Chief, you want to come up? So this is a position that states that it's for an administrative assistant position for the city fire department, not for the rural.
Correct.
And so for no other purposes would be that description of not for the rural district?
She does do some filing for them. That's what the original position was, a part-time through Personnel Plus. And they just committed to funding the portion that they were already funding in the city's position.
So is this already an employee that's on staff?
Yes,
Full-time employee?
yes.
So the 25,000 initial commitment by the rural district, does that cover her salary or not?
No, that's just a little over half. That would be this year's commitment that they made. The next year would be the 29,000 when the full year was charged for. So it's a little over half of her full-time wage.
Okay, so benefits, city's paying her benefits and the other half of her salary already?
Correct.
Okay, so why is this coming before us as far as this funding? Is it just to be able to accept the dollars from the rural district?
So Mayor and Council, yes, a little bit of history. This was a part-time position through Personnel Plus, and what we were finding is we were paying the same amount to fund a part-time position as well. The district, in its normal tradition with the city, stated that they would continue their current amount that they were providing for a part-time position to our full-time position. It's only coming to you today because they finally received the bill from the city at the end of the year. So it's just a once-a-year payment that occurs with the final bill from the city.
So final question is, so this is ongoing, that they'll be giving this money for
Yes.
this position?
This was just clarifying that they wanted the money they were giving to be taken out prior to their 16.38% being charged to the whole budget.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's budgeted and accounted for, just timing is why it showed up now instead of earlier.
Thank you.
You bet.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Bruner.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you, Kirk. So 5.2 is an action item. This is to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement for the purchase of wastewater treatment capacity with Admiral Beverage Corporation. It's been reviewed and approved by legal.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Bruner.
Yes.
Item 5.3 is an action item. This is to authorize the mayor to sign the First Amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding for the intersection of Happy Valley Road and Victory Road with Nampa Highway District, and it was reviewed and approved by legal.
I'm waiting. So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Item 5.4 is an action item, and this is to authorize the mayor to sign the letter that was included in the packet declaring the city's opposition to the proposed City of Star Comprehensive Plan amendment that overlays the City of Nampa impact area.
So
Very good letter. Okay, I'll second. I'm just going to say very good letter. Thank you.
Thank you. And second, was it
I
second?
was, I think Randy
Okay.
motioned, I seconded.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 5.5 is an action item, and this is for the council to award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for lab equipment procurement project with Seal Analytical, Inc. in the amount of $74,871. This is approved in the FY21 budget.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Roll call. Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Item 5.6 is an action item. This is authorization to advertise and proceed with requests for qualification processes, seeking consultants to design an intelligent transportation system and intelligent video analytics system. Would you like a presentation on this from Jeff? Okay, Jeff.
Yes.
Mayor and City Council, thanks for your time tonight. We've been working together with the police department on a very exciting project. Also, IT has been involved. It is an intelligent transportation system. So right now, in streets department, for instance, when a signal goes into flash mode or there's an issue, so let's say on Garrity or one of these other congested roads, we have to send a crew out there to just do a quick tweak of the signal. Police also can do that. This system will do two things. It's going to be on the street side of things. It's going to be a benefit in that we can just adjust those remotely. Also, we have a project going out right now, and we're timing 15 signals around Amazon. If you've been on I-84 at the peak time coming westbound, you see that's backing up on I-84. But we're retiming those signals. So what we can do in the future through a traffic management center is time those signals remotely and watch those corridors, see how the flow of traffic is using a central software. And so that's this part of the project. Some of the signal equipment and the cameras can also be used for police analytics and their video analytics to help in crime prevention and crime enforcement and public safety. So,
Mayor and Council, this is actually about 2 years of work so far to date. I think one of the really neat things about this is, and Ken Nutt has been vital in this as well, the analytics software that the police department has looked at affords a tremendous benefit to the street department as well. Currently, we're throwing hoses out, doing traffic counts, all the stuff that they do, which I don't claim to be an expert in. This system actually allows us to do all of those counts just with the video analysis done by the system. So, for example, a traffic signal camera we need to know how many big rigs, how many 18-wheelers or doubles or triples are rolling through that intersection. We could use this software to tell you which companies are rolling through the intersection, what color their trucks were, probably who their drivers were, how many sets of doubles, triples, all those types of things. The ability of the systems that we've looked at, and we're actually getting ready to go live on a trial run with one of the systems, is just off the charts when it comes to the data that just streets can use to make their jobs better. And then at the same time, it also affords police the opportunity to look deep into what's going on in our city. What prompted this was a homicide we had about 3 years ago, where a juvenile was shot and killed amidst it was a violent confrontation over drugs. But the suspect vehicle left that location, and what we found out 2 months later was it drove through an intersection that was about 2 minutes away. And with a system like this, we'd have had that vehicle identified because it happened in the middle of the night, literally within minutes. And it wouldn't have taken us 2 months to figure out who a suspect was. Now, we're not into the Big Brother thing. These are public cameras. These are street-facing cameras. We're not trying to look into houses or anything along those lines. This is strictly about gaining analytics on what's going on in the city, in those public areas that can help us both combat crime as well as look at traffic flows and those things from a police standpoint and work with streets to maybe modify signals and those types of things to decrease traffic crashes and those types of things. So it's a pretty in-depth model that we're looking at. There's only a few cities around the country that currently use this model, and probably not to the level that we're discussing. So we're pretty excited about it, and quite frankly, police couldn't get it done without streets anyway, so, which is why it's been a great partnership with Jeff.
Mayor Kling.
Mhm.
Chief, is this just within the city limits of Nampa, or does it go out into the perimeters into the impact area?
So depending upon the software we use, it actually can go global. And what I mean by that is just since starting to set things in place for this trial run, you're familiar, we've probably talked in the past about license plate readers, which a lot of agencies use to identify stolen vehicles. I've gotten at least 24 requests so far from agencies around the country who use this same system, who want us to give access to our cameras for the purposes of just license plate reader identification. So for example, if in Dallas, Texas, there's a homicide and the suspect leaves in a certain vehicle with a license plate and it travels through Nampa, we would get alerted and they would get alerted that that vehicle was in our city. I think that's a pretty cool thing as a citizen to know if we've got a homicide suspect from another jurisdiction wandering around our town. So it is literally can be that big. We have not stretched our wings, as it were, so far with our sister agencies around us. That will be the intent down the road. But we're looking at the volume of effort and quite frankly, funding it's taking to get us even to this point, let alone up and running. And just because of that level of commitment, we thought, well, we'll try it here first. And if it's going to work, which we fully believe it will.
So the cameras are mounted.
Yes.
Okay, it's not it's satellite imaging possibly as well, but cameras, are they within the city limits or are they outside the city limits?
Currently, they would be. As a matter of fact, currently all the cameras that we're looking at would be fixed cameras on intersections. Some of those would have pan tilt zoom capabilities, so you could look at things. If traffic crash occurs, you could adjust the camera so we can get a view of the crash scene, give real-time information to the police and fire as they're rolling up to it. There's a really almost limitless capabilities just with what we have available.
Okay. And the dollars are coming from impact fee dollars and Project Bronco, I see.
Yeah, Project Bronco had contingency money in their contract, saying if they came in within budget and generally within schedule, that they had 1.5 million available. And they've committed $1 million of that so far, and 500,000 is still dependent upon how the project goes. But yeah, the funding proposed for that is from Amazon and then impact fees. And then there's also money that Amazon gave to ITD. It was 4.7 million to improve intersections and traffic in the vicinity of Amazon. So we requested that in writing, remember, about a year ago. And then we're going to revisit that and ask for additional money to fund the project out of that amount that was given to ITD.
I'd like to be clear on something. We just spent quite a bit of time just talking on the policing. The impetus and the funding for this is traffic mitigation. And what it does, and I think you said this at the beginning, but I want to make sure we don't, while that's a wonderful benefit, what we talked about, the policing, this funding is coming from streets for transportation purposes. And so it's a partnership, and so there's a benefit that's a wonderful benefit to this. But the focus is traffic mitigation, and it's connecting all those lights and having somebody that can control those lights, because what we've got to do in a very difficult traffic situation is minimize the traffic delays. And that's why Amazon and even ITD would allow this use of this. Has to do with, we've got to get the cars not stacking up on the freeway because of the exit there. We've got to get it moving faster on Garrity. We've got to move our traffic better. This intelligent transportation system is the vehicle to do that. and for the communication happening between the lights, and somebody to be able to see that we've got a major backup, we've got to make a light go longer, right, to get the traffic off the freeway. I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about the funding of this and where it's coming from. Yeah, but it's a great benefit.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, the safety tool, I think, applies both to streets and police. When they do their job well, our job gets easier and we can refocus our efforts on other places. So I think that's a great point, Mayor. And that really was the nexus of our relationship in this was safe streets via traffic. They're just safer in general. The fact that we can reap some benefits from existing cameras on top of that, just make it that much better. The software that we look at is better than the software, quite frankly, that the traffic world has available or looks at generally, because ours was designed to do very deep analytics. But just in meeting with Ken Nutt, the advantages to the street side of this are just fantastic.
So Mayor, question. So our anticipated annual funding for software licensing is around 60,000. Is that what I read? So the city would be responsible for 60,000 annual budgeting for the software
that's
licensing.
split between streets and police.
That was my question. That's how you guys are going to divide that. And as far as the contract with the software, is that for multiple years, or how's that contract read as far as for the licensing?
Well, I'll answer for streets. It's, there's going to be big upgrades periodically, and that might be more, but it's around $10,000 a year for the software. We have 70 signals, and we can hook up streetlights in the future. We can grow this so that we have a lot of efficiencies as far as maintenance and operations.
So the 60,000 that I read, what's that about then? Annual software licenses are expected to be approximately 60,000 on both the ITS and the IVAS system.
Yeah, and I think like most of the softwares that we use in the 911 center and just around the city in general, you have your initial upfront purchase for hardware, software to get whatever program it is running, and then there's just an annual maintenance that covers the cost of updates and, you know, routine fix-its and those types of things. And again, where we have not selected an actual company to provide this, the approximation is about 60,000 regardless of which one we choose.
Okay.
Mayor,
So half of that would be general fund. Because it's the split, just for clarity on that topic, you've got the streets fund, if you're splitting it, that comes out of the streets funding. The other piece that's policing would be coming from general fund. So not 100% of that's out of general fund. Some of it's out of streets, which is a separate funding. Councilman Haverfield?
To avoid the issues that we've had at the parking structure with hardware maintenance, are there local companies that can provide this type of maintenance capability as far as for this equipment?
We certainly can look into that in the design process.
Well, that's the problem we've had with the parking structure, the arms that, as far as for payments and such, in and out, is just having the capability of maintenance. And something like this, we're not maintaining it ourselves. We don't have that capability, so we're going to be relying upon someone. So this is an RFP process. So you're going out to look to see who's available. So have you done any research as who in the valley might be available to provide this?
Yes, it is. As far as the software itself goes, there's only a few companies that provide the analytics and the overall software package of capturing video, storing video, and analyzing video. All of the companies have a national footprint. Most of them have, well, at least two of the three have local footprints as well in the valley or in the state of Idaho. Probably the biggest name that you're most familiar with is Motorola, which Motorola is probably our biggest vendor at the police department as far as all the different softwares, radios, and those types of things that we use.
As long as you're comfortable with having the service capability of a company, that's what I'm looking for you.
And the kind of customer service is one of the things we discussed had to be right at the top.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve this RFP process if we've talked enough.
Second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
So the agendized 5.7 was actually postponed Public hearings are complete. We're moving to unfinished business. We did action item 7.1 earlier, so we're moving to action item 7.2, which is the first reading of ordinance for annexation and zoning to multifamily residential at 1002 North Happy Valley Road and 4719 Stam Lane for multifamily residential use. This is for Blake Wolf, and it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance determining that certain lands commonly known as 1002 North Happy Valley Road and 4719 Stam Lane, comprising approximately 3.53 acres more or less, lay contiguous to the city limits of the city of Nampa, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the city of Nampa as part of the RMH zone, declaring said lands by proper legal description as described below be a part of the city of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the city of Nampa, Idaho, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing an effective date, and directing the clerk of the city of Nampa to file a certified copy of the ordinance on the map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, state of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63215.
So moved, Mayor, under suspension of rules.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. You can go Munchie or Haverfield, whichever one is the second.
I
Both of them?
heard Haverfield,
Okay.
sorry.
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Brunner?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Action item 7.3 is the first reading of ordinance for zoning map amendment to unzoned from unzoned to community business at 0 North Broadway and 0 Northside Boulevard. This is to zone a piece of land that should have been zoned at the time of annexation for the city of Nampa on behalf of the owner of Idaho Arts Charter School, and it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the city of Nampa, Idaho to provide BC zone designation for certain previously unzoned lands located to the west of North Broadmoor Way, south of Shannon Drive, comprising approximately 3.52 acres more or less, determining that said zoning is in the best interest of the citizens and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city of Nampa, Idaho, zoning said property to BC, providing for recording, instructing the city engineer to designate said property as BC on the official zoning maps and other area maps of the city, providing severability and providing for an effective date and repealing all ordinances, rules, and regulations and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
Make a motion to pass the preceding ordinance as read under suspension of rules.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
7.4 is an action item. This is the first reading of ordinance correcting the legal description of ordinance 4535, and it's requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance determining that certain lands commonly known as 2000 South Midland Boulevard, comprising approximately 11.5 acres more or less, lay contiguous to the city limits of the city of Nampa, county of Canyon, state of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the city of Nampa, Idaho, as part of the RD zone, declaring that said lands by proper legal description as described below be part of the city of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, and directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the city of Nampa, Idaho, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing an effective date and directing the clerk of the city of Nampa to file a certified copy of the ordinance and map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, state of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63215.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to pass the preceding ordinance as read under suspension of rules.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Section 8 of the agenda is just the pending ordinances that are postponed, waiting for supporting documentation, which moves us to the last section on the agenda, which is an executive session. And I would stand for a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061D to consider records that are exempt from disclosure as provided in Chapter 1, Title 74 of Idaho Code.
So moved, sir. So moved, Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Brunner?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
For those watching online, we will not be returning after the executive session. And just as a reminder, there are no decisions made in executive session. So thank you all for joining us.